From the moment you put it on, you'll help raise awareness for heart disease and stroke. Since my cardiac arrest, I've had 2 more children. I've watched all 3 of my children grow into adulthood. I'm going to cry now. Graduate from college. My daughter got married. I have grandchildren. And I'm still here. Call now or visit helpheart.org to become a monthly donor.
Good evening. Welcome to N2's special coverage. It's finally here. The very first 2024 CNN presidential debate between Donald Trump and Joe Biden. Hi, everybody. I'm Bianca Della Garza.
Yes, you are. And I'm John Bachman. It's great to be back with you, Bianca, for this special coverage. We are just 1 hour away from this big showdown. And it's already a historic night, right? Because this is the first time a former president will be debating the current president.
Yeah, and there's a lot of rules, as we've been, aware of for days, and now we are just an hour away. It's also the earliest debate in election by any cycle so far. A lot of controversy about the setup. You're looking live here. Of course, there's the muted microphone, John. You have the spin room, which is actually nowhere near the debate stage. I think there's like a street away from it. And now we're hearing that the White House Correspondents Association upset because they wanted a pool camera and they can't get one in.
Yeah, it's kind of a weird situation where you're covering this event that you have no real access to what's going on. You're not going to be able to see it with your own eyes. There's going to be nobody in there except for the people that CNN want in that room. So there's going to be a lot of emphasis, obviously, on the spin room. There'll be a lot of journalists. Some are already there, including our own campaign staff and surrogates. They're gathering there tonight. We've seen Gavin Newsom making his way around the spin room.
That hair.
Yeah, it's impressive. So just say what you will about Gavin Newsom. You can't fault him for that haircut. Now, this is all located in the McCamish Pavilion on the campus of Georgia Tech. It used to be called the Alexander Memorial Coliseum when I was growing up. Some people know of it as the Thriller Dome.
Oh, okay. Well, there's going to be some thrills
There'll be some thrills in the spin room tonight. That's right, Bianca.
Yeah.
So.
Well, you talked about Gavin Newsom, too, and the fact that this debate is so early. There's still that chit-chatter whether or not, Joe Biden will be the eventual nominee. And we know Newsom's come out and said Joe Biden is the master class. They've done all those photo ops out there in the Golden State. So it's interesting to see him out there spinning for him. But it is truly going to be a make it or break it a night for many say for Joe Biden. A lot of pressure on him versus Donald Trump, not so much.
Yeah, and I think, a clip we've played this week, I'm sure you probably have as well, that Van Jones clip where he said, this is it. This is the whole entire election. If Joe Biden has some sort of short circuit moment, it could be it for his campaign. It
could, but he certainly had plenty of rest, a historic amount of rest now, 7 days up at Camp David. And now, again, we are just under an hour away from the debate to begin. Speaking of Gavin Newsom, our own James Rosen was the one speaking with him recently. He is in the spin room. James, we're going to welcome you in right now. Obviously, Newsom's there to do his job there to be in for Biden, but a lot of Trump surrogates as well, I'm sure, floating around.
John and Bianca, good evening. Spin room is a 1980s term. What we have here is a spin arena. This is a place the size of a small basketball arena, and the surrogates and the media people are all milling about as the anticipation has been building here all day. The Biden-Harris campaign has spent upwards of 7 figures just today to try and shape perceptions ahead of the big event. So, for example, around Metro Atlanta, 50 billboards popped up today with pro-Biden messaging, and also the campaign has done what they call a takeover of various digital news sites on the internet. So, for example, if you log in to CNN's website or Telemundo or BuzzFeed, the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, and others, you will be bombarded by pro-Biden-Harris advertising messages. They even took out a full-page ad talking about legacy media in USA Today today. The top half of that ad shows a black and white image unflattering of former President Trump and calls him a convicted felon who's only out for himself. Beneath that is a color photo of President Biden wearing aviators and waving and saying that he's a president who's fighting for you and your family. This previews the themes that we expect to hear from President Biden tonight, that his opponent is unfit for the presidency. Now, both men face vulnerabilities and have primary objectives tonight. And by the way, the Trump campaign only spent about $100,000 trying to shape perceptions ahead of this event. For former President Trump, it's critical that he not lose control of that famous temper of his, that he stay focused on policy failures of the Biden administration and on his own plans for the future, rather than relitigating 2020 or wallowing too deeply in the politics of grievance. For President Biden, the key task is to convince voters that he's up to the job physically and cognitively, and also to reframe this debate, as that pre-debate advertising was seeking to do, not as a referendum on his record, but rather as a choice election. Finally, there is one strain attendant upon former President Trump tonight that President Biden doesn't face, and that is to say there's only one candidate on that stage tonight of whom it can be said that everything he says can and might be used against him in a court of law, indeed in a court here in Fulton County in Georgia, as there are 3 criminal proceedings still awaiting former President Trump. So it's going to be an extraordinary event, an unprecedented one for some of the reasons we've mentioned. John and Bianca.
James Rosen in the spin room. Thanks, James.
All right, let's welcome in our first guest, host of The Pulse here on N2, David Harris, and also host of the Leventhal Report, Rick Leventhal, joining us now. Gentlemen, great to see you both.
Thank you. Great to be here. Nice to see you guys. Thank you. All
right, David, let's start with you. How do you think, I know obviously the moderators at CNN are going to control this, but how do you think Donald Trump comes out of the gate tonight?
Well, what I hope the president does is I hope that he addresses the American people. There's so many issues that Americans are facing right now. Everywhere they turn, whether they're opening up the refrigerator to see how few groceries they have, whether they're turning on their car and they're worried about how much gas they're going to have in their car, whether they're thinking about the fact that they haven't been able to take a vacation, whether they're just thinking about safety and security as they see and continually hear about so many American citizens, women and children that have been either raped or murdered underneath Joe Biden's watch. I hope the president, he speaks to the American people on the issues. I think that, we're going to see a lot of mumbling and jumbling from Joe Biden. They're probably going to use that 2-minute we hear. Potentially there's going to be up to a 2-minute delay from the actual feed before the American people see it. So who knows what's going to take place in there if that is accurate. But what I do hope that the president does is he stays his presidential self. The man has a proven track record. We don't have to guess at how he conducts policy. We don't have to guess on whether or not he's going to put America first. We already seen it. The first 3 years of his presidency were amazing. Security was, our border was secure. The stock market was booming. People's 401ks were great. Americans felt safe. We felt like we were living the American dream, and then COVID hits. So underneath Joe Biden, these last 3.5 years, it's been an absolute disaster. So I'm pretty sure the president has quite enough ammunition underneath his belt to be able to bring out any question whatsoever that Joe's not going to be able to answer, other than just probably try to mumble jumble, turn around, and then blame it on Republicans or blame it on Trump. But I know that we're going to see a very strong President Trump tonight, and who knows what state Joe Biden is going to be in. Hopefully he can stay standing for the entire 90 minutes.
Hopefully. I mean, the bar is so low. That's really going to be considered an accomplishment. Karine Jean-Pierre, the press gaggle gentleman, would not respond when a reporter asked what would he possibly be on if he was going to be, revved up on something. She said, I won't dignify that with an answer. I just want to play this. CNN, we know, has this muted microphone set up here. They actually put out an explainer as if Americans need to understand what a green light is and what a microphone is. Let's just play this, and Rick, I want to get your reaction on the flip.
If we go behind the podiums, you can see 2 green lights. When they're on, they signal to the candidate his microphone is on. When the green lights are off, they signal to the candidate his microphone is off. He's going to interrupt me as I'm speaking, and this is what it will sound like. My volume remains constant, while Phil's interruption can be difficult to understand.
He's going to interrupt me. My volume remains constant, while Victor's interruption can be difficult to understand. Shared this demonstration with the campaigns earlier today, and we're sharing it with you, our viewers, so everyone fully understands how tomorrow night will work.
Oh my goodness! Yes, it's not parody, Rick. They want you to know this is the rules.
Wow. I'm sorry. Can I watch that again?
No, you can't. You can't. I've seen
How does it work?
Wait, we're going to shut your microphone off.
Are you telling me when the mic's off, you can't hear me? Is that how it works?
Shut his mic off. Let me talk.
Can you hear me now?
You know, it's part of this.
I'm more concerned not with the microphones, but with what the two moderators do with their time, with their questions. I don't expect it to be fair, but I really hope they at least try to make this fair, because up until now, of course, they haven't been fair with Donald Trump. They weren't fair with him when he was in the White House, and they've been far less than fair since he left the White House. So there's very little likelihood that they're going to be fair tonight. But they have an opportunity to do that. They're on a big stage. They keep telling us that they're going to have the highest ratings they've ever had, which may well be true, but I am encouraging our viewers to keep it right here. I hope that, more people watch it on other platforms and give CNN less, feathers in their cap. It's really important that they ask the right questions, that they ask pointed questions, that they push Joe Biden on the border crisis, that they push him on the millions of people who've come in illegally, far more than ever in history have come across the border in the last 3 years. Why is that? And why doesn't he close the border completely when he sees so many of these immigrants who are here illegally murdering and raping our citizens? It's an absolute travesty, and that should be the focus, the biggest issue at tonight's debate.
Yeah, I think if they don't focus a lot of time on the economy and on immigration, the two issues that most people care about, it'll be a lost opportunity. They're going to want to talk about abortion a lot. They'll bring that up. But I think, those two issues, we got to hear the most on that.
I mean, it's a closed set. They're not even, as we came out of the air, we told you, White House Correspondents Association blasting CNN, saying that it is, quote, deeply concerned that it has rejected repeated requests to include White House travel pool. So, again, we'll keep our, reservations, open mind.
Yes.
Let's see how they do it. But you're right. Who is asking the questions, of course, controls sort of the direction and the narrative. But to David and Rick's point, Donald Trump can certainly ask his own tough questions of Joe Biden if need be.
That's true. All right. We got to run, guys. Great to see you both.
Donald Trump.
Absolutely.
All right. Sorry to cut you off, Rick.
Great to see you, too. Have a great show.
We'll be with them hopefully later this evening as well. Rick Leventhal and David Harris Jr., two of our colleagues here on N2. Yeah,
fantastic. They'll be with us for some of the post-show as well. Let's continue our pre-show right now. Pleased to bring in Florida Congressman Greg Steube with some pre-show analysis here. Obviously, Congressman, a lot on the line for Joe Biden and a lot of rest he's had. It's incredible. The world's on fire, yet Joe Biden had 90 minutes here tonight. He's more worried about that. Tell us what you are expecting tonight out of Joe Biden, out of Donald Trump, sir.
Yeah, I mean, what's interesting is, like you said, the bar is so low. If the guy doesn't fall getting up to the stage or shuffle across the stage and be able to complete a sentence, the American people are surprised that that's actually a well-done job for Joe Biden. But all Trump has to talk about is his record for 4 years and the current state of the economy, the current state of our country, the current state of immigration, national security, you name it. You can talk from Afghanistan to Ukraine to Israel to the 12 million illegals that have been allowed to come into our country. I just had a couple months ago, a citizen of my district raped by an illegal immigrant. So it's not just the border states, it's all across the country. So Trump's going to have plenty of things that he can talk about, but you're also right. I'm curious to see how CNN reporters are going to lead the discussion, because obviously they're going to try to prop up Joe Biden as much as they can. I hope that they don't do that, but I'm sure that they're probably going to do that as much as possible.
One of the things, too, I think that we've seen is the Biden campaign, they want to act like they're above it all, like he's better than Donald Trump. Cedric Richmond, who is one of the Biden campaign co-chairs, he was asked if Donald Trump deserves a handshake from Joe Biden. Here's what he said.
Should President Biden shake Donald Trump's hand? Does he deserve that?
Well, that's up to President Biden. And I'm sure there's no love lost there. I wouldn't shake his hand.
I mean, if that's how it's going to start, and then there's Casey Hunt again, who cut off Carolyn Levitt earlier this week, the disrespect. I mean, I think that's what we're going to see, a lot of that tonight, the condescension, the disrespect. And, Donald Trump is a major party nominee, the Republican nominee for the White House.
I'll write it and we'll do it live. Trump should walk over and extend his hand for a shake and let Joe Biden, blow him off and see how that plays with independents and mainstream Americans. It's
pretty crazy that they're even asking that question, that Joe Biden isn't going to shake Donald Trump's hand. But Trump needs to be the bigger man here and do those type of things. I think if he comes off as putting out the policies that were successful, not being goaded into anything that Biden's going to try to goad him into, and just focus on the things that he did great, which is the economy, immigration, national security, all of the things that if you look at polling, Americans trust him more. They trust trust Trump more than Joe Biden. Focus on that and how you're going to change these horrible policies that Joe Biden has had, and I think he's going to have an excellent night.
Congressman Steube, before we let you go, these HER tapes, the audio, the transcript's been released. Merrick Garland will not release the audio. We know tomorrow Congressman Anna Paulina may try to force a House vote to hold him in inherent contempt. Speaker Johnson says he will try and sue over these HER tapes. It's somewhat reminiscent, some say, of the Hunter Biden laptop in 2020. Do you think it comes up at tonight's debate? The laptop most certainly will, but with these HER tapes, again, there's something they do not want us to hear. Maybe it's Joe Biden's cognitive, issues here, so damaging, could be the nail in the coffin if Americans were to hear them.
Yeah, and I 100% support that tomorrow. I will vote for that if that comes up as a vote on the floor. Merrick Garland is completely avoiding the illegal oversight authority that Congress has over them, and he's completely ignoring that. We absolutely should hold him accountable to that, and that's exactly what the Biden administration is doing. You have a Republican House that is trying to hold them accountable and subpoenaing them and asking for information, and they're just ignoring it. They'll probably give it to us after November, but that's not when the American people want to see it. We need to stand for truth and stand for the law, and I hope that they bring that vote tomorrow.
All right, Congressman Greg Steube, thanks for being with us tonight, sir.
Thank you, Congressman.
Yeah, anytime. Good to see you.
All right, stay with us as we count down to the CNN debate simulcast, which you can watch right here on N2 tonight. We'll have expert analysis ahead, as well as the man who's been spending a lot of time with President Trump, Florida Congressman Byron Donalds. He was in Atlanta yesterday, too, for that barbershop roundtable. We'll talk to Congressman Donalds right after this.
Stressed and fatigued? Brain feeling foggy? Don't have the energy you used to? It may be your liver. You must protect your body's most precious asset. Best-selling author and surgeon Dr. Russell Blaylock has developed natural solutions. His breakthrough new book, The Liver Cure, will help you boost energy, detoxify your body, clear brain fog, and reignite your metabolism. Improve your health and quality of life. Get The Liver Cure today.
Cars will break down. And when they do, it's too late. If your car is out of warranty, it leaves you with two choices. Get stuck paying for expensive repairs, or one phone call to CarShield. Their administrators pay for your covered repairs so you don't have to. Your coverage includes roadside assistance, towing, rental, and so much more. Plus, with their nationwide network.
Trying again. Can you hear me? Test 1, 2, 3.
Make this smart call.
Just let me know in X.
Call CarShield
if you can hear me okay. If not,
all users of the
press 2.
If you or a loved one were diagnosed with non-Hodgkin lymphoma after using the Weed Killer Roundup, you may qualify for financial compensation. Call Liberty Legal to determine your eligibility now.
800-549-4412.
In August 2021, a California judge ordered Monsanto to pay $87 million in damages to a couple who were both exposed to Roundup and later diagnosed with non-Hodgkin lymphoma. It has been determined in court that Monsanto failed to warn Roundup users that the glyphosate in Roundup was a probable cancer-causing carcinogen. If you or a loved one were diagnosed with non-Hodgkin lymphoma or any other cancer after using Roundup, call Liberty Legal now to see if you qualify for financial compensation. There may be time deadlines, so don't wait. It costs you nothing if you don't win.
Call 800-549-4412. That's 800-549-4412. 800-549-4412.
Some breaking news. Famed political strategist Dick Morris says Donald Trump is running for president. Few people know President Trump better than Dick Morris. For years, Morris has served as his top advisor. Now, in his new bestseller, The Return, Dick reveals Trump's secret plan for 2024, his real reason for running, and his coming surprise announcement. Dick says Trump still faces 3 threats, but Biden can never be reelected. Newsmax calls The Return the only political book you need to read. It's already an Amazon #1 bestseller. If you want to see Trump's plan, Dick Morris shares it. Big media, big tech, and the deep state all want to stop Trump. But The Return shows they'll fail, and Trump will triumph. Get Dick Morris's The Return in bookstores everywhere. Or see the free offer, and Trump will triumph. Go online. Get Dick Morris's The Return in bookstores everywhere.
All right, can you feel it? The anticipation, it's building right now for tonight's 2024 presidential debate.
It is.
Looks like we are, 21 minutes away from the beginning of the debate. The CNN simulcast will air right here on N2. You'll see former President Trump and President Biden on the stage. Now, that is the spin room. We'll see a lot of the spin room after the debate.
Yes.
That's going to be where a lot of the post-debate coverage will take place. But let's get out now to Florida Congressman Byron Donalds. He's in the middle of all the action there in Atlanta in the spin room. Congressman, great to have you with us.
It's good to be with you guys. How you doing this evening?
All right, we know you're ready. I mean, we're going to obviously watch the debate, but there's going to be a lot of surrogates in that spin room after the fact. And considering that the deck has kind of been stacked against Donald Trump, how are you getting ready for the post-debate spin room, Congressman?
Everything is about the American people. Immigration, inflation, what's going to happen with tax policy, our economy and the strength that we need here at home, securing our border, foreign policy. Those are the issues that the American people care about. The media and Joe Biden, they can talk about January 6th. They can talk about that travesty in Lower Manhattan where Donald Trump's constitutional rights were violated. But at the end of the day, what matters is who has a vision for the American people going forward. Right now, it's Donald Trump. After this debate tonight, it'll still be Donald Trump. It's going to be a great night for him.
A vision, too, for the American dream. So many people, prosperity, it feels like such a, far reach to own a home, the younger generation. You were at the barbershop event yesterday where Donald Trump spoke to you on the telephone call, but he's really been good about communicating and speaking directly to the American voters, unlike Biden, who's been holed up at Camp David. Democrats are obviously going to be in their spin. Your words got spun recently when you talked about Jim Crow. What do you expect tonight? Any tricks you think they have up their sleeve or anything you'd be on the lookout for with these moderators, Congressman Donalds?
Well, look, first and foremost, I think it's in the best interest of CNN and, frankly, the big media that they stop doing all this stuff where they interject their opinions. Let the elected officials, let the candidates make their pitch directly. Let the issues actually speak for themselves, but they can't help themselves. I think the biggest thing we got to be concerned about, in my view, is will Jake Tapper or Dana Bash interrupt President Trump when he's trying to get to the key point of his argument? Are they going to constantly throw in things that might be great for the political circus of cable news, but don't matter whatsoever to the American people? That's the stuff you got to be concerned about. But I think when Donald Trump's ready for all this, he's going to pivot directly back to the issues that are ailing America and the failure brought to us by the master of disaster himself, Joe Biden.
What is the one message that Donald Trump needs to hammer home tonight about Joe Biden and his policies? What is the most important thing that comes across to those voters out there, Congressman, who are not decided yet?
The number one thing is that Joe Biden has no interest in fixing these problems. He created most of them, frankly, all of them. He's not going to fix them because the radicals in his administration aren't going to let him do it. And then the other key concern is, can he be president for 4 more years? We talked about it at the top of this segment. He was held up for 8 days at Camp David getting prepared for a debate. Are you kidding me? The president of the United States, especially in the state that America is in right now, has got to be prepared to be on the job every single day. We know Donald Trump can do that. Joe Biden simply cannot. He proved that for the last week.
And the state the world is in. So we heard the VP candidate is in the House.
He's there tonight.
Is it you, or is there? Do you know who it is? Want to break some news, Congressman?
I do not know. I'm not going to break any news. I do not know. Look, President Trump's going to make that decision. And he's going to make a great decision. But I'll tell you this, the people on that list, they all will be significantly better than what's going on in the Biden-Harris administration. I will tell you that. It's a great list. We have great talent. He's going to make a great decision. We're going to move on and be focused on November and be focused on winning.
All right, we'll talk to you later. Congressman Byron Donalds.
Can't blame a girl for trying.
Yeah,
Thanks,
true.
Congressman. Good to see you.
Gotta ask. You don't ask, the answer's always no, right?
That's right. All right, let's continue this conversation right now. White House Washington reporter for Politico, Daniel Littman.
And Aaron Perini is back with us, GOP strategist as well. Great to see you both.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
All right, so let's try to take a look back at some of these post-debate moments with Donald Trump to see if we can gauge what we're going to see tonight. I think we can say both candidates are probably different than they were the last time around, but let's take a look.
You've called women you don't like fat pigs, dogs, slobs, and disgusting animals. Your Twitter account...
Only Rosie O'Donnell.
It is, it's just awfully good that someone with the temperament of Donald Trump is not in charge of the law in our country.
Yeah, because you'd be in jail. Let me just, he wants to be a tough guy. A lot of times you'll have, and it doesn't work very well with
How tough is it to take property from an elderly woman?
Let me talk. Quiet.
How tough
is it? A lot of times, that's all of his donors and special interests out there.
Some really great moments.
Yeah, the thing I think we're going to be looking closely is which Donald Trump we're going to see. And those moments I think will not be able to happen tonight because the mics will be muted at different times. Aaron, what kind of performance do you want to see from Donald Trump tonight?
President Trump would be best served to make sure he is taking a measured response this evening, that he is staying in the middle. Joe Biden, as we've seen through reporting, is interested in trying to knock him off his mark, get him upset, get him flustered. Donald Trump is very good at staying in his lane and talking about the policy and forward-looking, because everything Donald Trump can say tonight is, if it's the economy, if it's immigration, I can change immigration. Look at what I did 4 years ago. I can make the economy better. Look at what I've done before. He can provide a forward-looking policy position, but also just very quickly nod to the fact that he's already had these successes. But he cannot let Joe Biden get him off his mark whatsoever.
It's been really good with some of the policies. No taxes on tips at the Nevada rally, sitting with those business leaders, talking about AI, listening, really wooing and getting the ears of Silicon Valley, big liberal town. Daniel, the New York Times Siena survey showing Trump with a 6-point lead over Biden, 6 points, 48-42. If Biden doesn't pull it together tonight, you think that lead could grow even bigger? Is this make it or break it tonight for Joe Biden?
Well, most Americans are going to be watching, and there are still some people who are undecided. And so I think Biden has more at stake in this debate than Trump, because if the election if this is kind of a no one wins, no one loses, then this helps Trump, because Biden really needs to shake up the margin of this race, the trajectory, and so he needs to have some big moments. He needs to put Trump on his back feet and kind of paint him as this extremist who would end democracy and would only look out for his own interests and not for the American people. And so you're already seeing the ads calling Trump kind of an out-of-touch billionaire and someone who is only focused on himself and saving himself from criminal trials.
Yeah, we've been hearing that. Probably hear some convicted felons sprinkled in, a little abortion, a little J6, all of that. We'll see, though. It is those independent voters in those battleground states that will have to be convinced otherwise.
And, we, of course, everyone knows who's been paying attention to this, and probably most of the people watching tonight know that Donald Trump is a convicted felon. So how much power is that type of phrasing going to have for Joe Biden, and how will Donald Trump respond? Aaron, one of the things that we know that Democrats and Joe Biden have been working on, all 16 or 17 people that have been prepping Joe Biden this week, how do they get under Donald Trump's skin? What do you expect them to do?
I would not be shocked if the first time publicly you hear Joe Biden call Donald Trump a felon. That would be a very aggressive stance and a very aggressive comment by the president toward the former president. And that is something that I don't anticipate would rattle Donald Trump, but it's something that would certainly make headlines. And to Daniel's point,
Joe Biden here has everything to gain. And
Should wear that as a badge of honor, quite honestly.
this for Joe Biden is really the test. This is why this debate is early, because Joe Biden is behind in the polls and he's trying to make up ground. So he is going to do everything and throw everything he can at Donald Trump because he thinks that will knock him off his mark and get Trump to be bombastic and yelling and argumentative and very hot-headed. But Donald Trump is aware of all of this. So while Biden's team thinks that they're being creative with 16 people in a room, Donald Trump is very quick on his feet. That's what makes him a sharp debater. That's what gives you those kind of viral moments. And those are the things that campaigns can use to their benefit. But I will be very clear here.
You should watch this on CNN. It is the absolute opposite of what they're talking about.
Because this is a make or break moment for his campaign.
All right. Daniel Lippman, Aaron Perini, we'll be seeing you guys tonight. Enjoy the debate, which is almost 30 minutes away, getting closer. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you both. It is high stakes, high drama, and it is 30 minutes away. You can watch the CNN debate right here, simulcast on N2. We'll be bringing it to you live. John and I will be back after a very quick break with more pre-debate analysis. Don't go anywhere.
Quite a few people, especially on X right now. That's pretty exciting. I am really looking forward.
If you've been injured in an accident that's not
to this debate, I have to make sure that my mic is on. So any thoughts from anyone that's actually watching this right now, what they think is going to happen? Do you think it's going to be fair for Donald Trump? Do you think it's the fix is in? I happen to think the fix is in. I'm curious to hear what you all think. But this is going to be really interesting. I think this is a huge mistake on Donald Trump's part in agreeing to this, because it is definitely going to be rigged against him. That's the thing. So, but let me know what you think. Do you think he can manage to get through this or not?
At MD Hearing and get the over-the-counter hearing aids that I use for you.
Call 800-381-4294.
Hi, folks, we're back. If you've been injured in an accident that's not your fault and you don't have an attorney, listen up. We have legal professionals standing by to answer your questions and tell you what your case is potentially worth. Pick up the phone, call now.
Attention Medicare beneficiaries. If you're new to Medicare, recently moved, or losing coverage, you may qualify for enrollment in a Medicare Advantage plan, so make sure you know your Medicare ABCs. You may be familiar with Medicare Parts A and B, but if you are thinking about Part C, also called a Medicare Advantage plan, speak with a licensed insurance agent to see what plans and benefits are available in your area. Our partners offer plans from Humana, Aetna, Anthem Blue Cross and Blue Shield, United Healthcare, Kaiser Permanente, Cigna Healthcare, WellCare, so you can compare your options, coverage, and pricing across multiple carriers. If you're new to Medicare, recently moved, or losing coverage, make the free call to the number on your screen. Give them your zip code, and a licensed insurance agent will walk you through the entire process. It's
nice that this is actually simulcast on Newsmax, so we don't have to watch it through CNN. And there were rumors that CNN was threatening channels and takedowns if they stream this debate on their own channels. Austin Bergen, it says a lot about power and respect of the American people when they don't allow a studio audience. You don't have a voice. You aren't concerned. They aren't concerned with you. They learned through the town hall with Donald Trump. They've learned that how he can control a room. And once again, this is why I disagree with this. I don't think that this is a good idea. There's too much rigged against Donald Trump to where it's going to be difficult for him to overcome the silencing the mics. It's going to be difficult for him to overcome a lot of things. You have Biden, who it'll be interesting if he can stand up the entire time. But it'll be certainly interesting to see the two moderators. I mean, we saw her last name's Hunt yesterday, who was interviewing Donald Trump's press secretary, cut her right off because she was telling the truth about Jake Tapper, and Jake Tapper is going to be one of the guys that's talking tonight. And they're Trump haters, so I mean, this could have been done on virtually any other channel other than CNN, but he chose to do it with CNN. I just don't get it, but we'll see what happens. I'm very curious. Biden may not even be able to speak one coherent sentence. We'll have to see how that goes. But I am super happy that this is actually being covered on Newsmax other than CNN.
The debate, talking about what Donald Trump, so that's what they're going to do. But let's bring in now Joe Pinion, GOP strategist, former Senate candidate from New York. And, Joe, this is going to be a very unique kind of situation for the spin room, because the way this debate is set up, so many advantages for Joe Biden. Whatever happens during the debate, it's really going to be kind of cemented in that spin room.
Well, look, I think the question becomes, do we have an honest accounting of the last 4 years of Joe Biden? We talked about this last night on Prime News. Are we going to discuss the fact that we hit a 10-year high for actual defaults for credit card debt and also auto debt under Joe Biden's watch? Are we going to talk about the fact that nearly 600,000 Americans are defaulted on their car payments on Joe Biden's watch? The southern border, where we have a fentanyl crisis that is killing 204 Americans every single day. Joe Biden and Chuck Schumer called it a Republican talking point. So everyday Americans are feeling the brunt of a failed presidency. Are those issues going to be brought up by these moderators? If they are not, then, as many people have talked about, this is not a debate. This is a forum for Joe Biden to spread disinformation to the nation, while the people that have been given constitutional rights to ensure that the people of this country, the citizenry, are informed, actually never get to have the answers to the issues afflicting this nation answered.
Yeah, and that's why Donald Trump was saying it's basically 3 against 1 as he walks into that lion's den of a room tonight. He'll handle it well, though. I don't think he'll be baited. That's just my opinion.
Did anyone hear, that was pretty funny, Kingdom, Biden at Camp David for a blood transfusion, but I think that Donald Trump challenged Biden to a drug test and he refused. Does anybody have any news on that? I've been working all day, unlike leftists. So I haven't heard if that was actually the case or not. I wouldn't doubt it, but that would have been pretty funny.
Americans are looking and saying, I don't want any of this, whether it be blacks or Latinos or just, as you said, voters who are just saying my bank account is depleted. This is not a Democratic Party that's speaking to anyone except maybe the elites, maybe Gavin Newsom, who's there.
Well, look, I think, again, Democrats have been prolific at getting people to ignore the pain and suffering that is impacting their lives every single day. I think Republicans have to acknowledge that reality and find a way to push back. And so I think it would behoove the president in this debate, if they're going to mute his mic, to spend his time asking Joe Biden the questions that the moderators are clearly not going to ask him. To ask Joe Biden why he undermined the safest, securest border we have seen in the modern history of this nation. And now we have 8 million people flooding our southern border. To ask Joe Biden, how is it possible that we went from 12 people on the terrorist watch list under his 4 years to over 300 people on the terrorist watch list being apprehended in just 3.5 years under Joe Biden? We heard yesterday that we have over 400 people that have been smuggled into this country by an actual terrorist organization connected to ISIS. And we don't know where at least 50 of them are. These are real issues that no one is talking about. I pray that we hear about them on the debate stage tonight, but if we don't, it indicates that every single dirty trick has been pulled out to ensure that they can try to grease Joseph Robinette Biden back into office while actually leaving this country bare and insecure.
All right, Joe Pena, great to see you, Joe. Thank you.
Thanks, Joe.
Appreciate you guys.
All right, we appreciate you, and we will be back after a very quick break here. Again, the CNN debate is simulcast right here on N2, so you can keep it right here. We're back.
Yes, this is, I think, in my opinion, the student debt thing is obviously to buy votes because they have nothing to stand on. So, of course, all of us as taxpayers and those who paid our student debt are now having to foot the bill in order to buy Biden votes. I think the Julian Assange release is also political. I'm glad that he's released, but I think he did that in order to buy votes as well. And later on, I definitely want to talk about the border. I've been in a lot of spaces on X. Those of you who are on, there are a lot of you right now on YouTube, and trying to get as many of you over to either X. We have over 500 people right now on X. Quite a few on Rumble. Let me check right now. Not that many now, but trying to get as many people as possible over to Rumble and X, especially X. You get a lot of good political news there. There's a lot less silencing on X as well. So you can follow me over there. It's x.com/Den Hendrickson, D-E-N Hendrickson. But I'm in a lot of what they call Twitter spaces or X spaces. And in those, I talk a lot about the border and what's going on with the border and how the UN is involved in the border. And Kingdom, you bring up the border insurrection. And yes, there's a tremendous amount of people obviously coming over the border, but the reason a lot of people aren't asking the question of why is that? Why is that happening? And I'm not going to get into a lot of that now because we're about to start the debate here in about 20 minutes or so, but this is, to me, is an extremely important subject, and a subject that has to be dealt with, and a subject that has to be talked about much more honestly than we're talking about right now. Yeah. So for those of you who aren't on X, I definitely encourage you to set up an account there. You are going to get a lot more political news if you're involved in politics and you want to learn more about politics, and it's not as censored. Rumble's pretty good too, obviously, but X to me is really taking over. So those of you who are on YouTube, if you want to get the truth and you really want to find out more, then you definitely need to get on X.
of the election cycle is upon us. We are 15 minutes away from the CNN presidential debate. Welcome into our pre-debate show right here on Newsmax 2. I'm Bianca Della Garza, along with John Bachman. And the stage right there is, well, it's not there because that's a spin room, and CNN won't let us see the stage.
That's right. We will see the stage at 9 o'clock tonight. Let's bring in political analyst Mark Halpern to talk about the debate and everything that is on the line. Mark, thanks for being here. Great to see you.
Hey, Mark.
I've got my off-camera, my Diet Coke and my peanut M&M, so I'm ready.
All right, I was going to ask you what is your debate snack of choice, but he answered the question.
Why off camera?
M&Ms and Diet Coke.
Now I'm not sure it is that. Maybe it's something stronger.
Well, we don't want to spill.
Well, Diet Coke is made in Atlanta, I think, so that's appropriate. And the peanut M&Ms, peanuts are, of course, Jimmy Carter, Atlanta. So
that's right.
Georgia.
Right.
So it's all very, very local.
If you're really a Georgian, you put your peanuts in your Coca-Cola.
Wow.
Which is
don't do that after the segment.
I boil them. And it's all washed down with a peach cobbler chaser.
That's right. That's right. And
calories don't count on debate night.
Let's get to it, Mark Halpern. You know, there are a few things that Donald Trump and Joe Biden need to accomplish. Now, let's kind of run through what you think is the most important thing that Donald Trump must accomplish tonight.
To be presidential and calm and strong, and to try to make as much debate as possible about Joe Biden's record on crime, immigration, and the economy.
Well, we'll see if that can happen. And Joe Biden, we have about 20 seconds left. Because of all this rest, does he pull through maybe a fairly good performance tonight?
I mean, if they can't get a good performance out of him, letting him rest and study for a week, I think the world's got a problem. If I had to bet, I bet he'll be fine. But you don't know. The body language from the Biden folks is remarkably confident. And they seem to be basically saying, you'll see. Maybe we'll see. Maybe he will. Like I said, if I had to bet, he'd have to be in really bad shape to not be able to do a 90-minute debate after enough time off to grow a beard.
Yeah, we will see in exactly 16 minutes. With Mark Halpern, without a beard, and with
his snacks.
Yes, with his snacks. Thanks. All right.
Yeah.
Thanks, Mark. Good to see you.
Good to see you both.
All right, let's get out to the spin room now, where Mike Carter is standing by with the latest there. Hey, Mike.
Hey guys, good evening. Well, as we count down the minutes to 9 o'clock and the first presidential debate between a current president and a former president, look, this is all going to come down to the expectation game. Who can win? Who will come out with people scratching their heads saying, boy, is that our guy? To that end, Donald Trump has said that Joe Biden, he is both a worthy debater, and in the past he said, well, he's the worst debater. So which is it? Well, we asked the governor of California tonight, a Biden surrogate, Gavin Newsom. He was here on the spin room floor just a few minutes ago. Look, if President Biden doesn't fulfill the expectations to show up tonight and at least well, let's say show up and perform, what will happen? A lot of people will be calling for his name to get booted off the ticket and then for Gavin Newsom to go on it. What does Gavin Newsom think about that opinion?
Can't wait to hear this.
I've been doing this a little while. I've spent a little time on some of the conservative networks. I tend to pay a lot of attention to them. This is intentional mishigash. It's complete nonsense. It's all a sideshow in order to create anxiety and uncertainty.
This guy's such a fucking scumbag.
This candidacy. So I'm not even
Excuse my language, but I hate
this man. That's not even in question. There is no doubt about any of that. Period. Full stop.
Thank you so much. All right.
This is a man who had sex with his campaign manager's wife, broke up a family, and all the other things that he's done. But this is one of the worst while he was mayor of San Francisco and running for governor of California. Gavin Newsom is the sleaziest of the sleaze.
The ticket, someone else like him getting on the ticket. What are the expectations for President Biden and for President Trump tonight?
Well, first of all, it's unacceptable that Joe Biden had to go to debate camp for an entire week. Meanwhile, the world is in chaos. We have a week in national security. We have a catastrophic border crisis because of Joe Biden's failed policies. So what I believe the American people will see tonight is the strength and the strong record of President Trump, his America First vision that delivered a secure border, a booming economy, peace through strength around the world, and unleashed energy independence. Compare that with Bidenflation, the war on American energy that Joe Biden's policies put into place on day one, a wide open border that is a humanitarian crisis. So we will see that stark contrast today, and I know the American people are looking forward to viewing the debate.
All right, Congressman, I know you have to run. Thank you so much for your time tonight. We'll send it back to you guys.
To get that in there with Congresswoman Elise Stefanik. Thank you, Mike.
Potential VP candidate. All right, we're going to take a quick break or more right after this on N2.
Yes, Kingdom. We need we need the United States to be a Christian nation. We have too much going on. I want to make sure that I don't screw this up. We have. This is another subject to get into, but because the United States is not run by Christians and a Christian nation any longer, this is the reason we have the issues that we do right now. And we do have serious problems. And again, this is another subject I get into on Spaces within X. And but yeah, we definitely need to be praying a lot, especially with what's going on in the world. We have communists that are taking over the country. It's neo-Bolshevism that has taken over. And it's we're in pretty bad shape. So it's going to be very, very important, this election. And I'll be the first one to tell you, I wish we had somebody even farther right than Donald Trump when it comes to dealing with the situation that we have, but he's all we've got for right now. And again, I'm really interested to see how this debate is going to go down, but I'm a little worried because I think there's a lot of money involved coming from Israel, and as the night goes on, I'll probably get kicked off of YouTube, but we definitely have some issues with a fifth column of Israel that is really causing a lot of the issues that we're dealing with right now. If you can, in the chat, let me know if I'm coming in clear enough, and if the audio is coming in clear, if I need to make any adjustments. Is it too high? Is it too low? Is it too low of a bass, too high of a bass, whatever it might be? Just let me know if the volume and the sound is okay. The other thing that's going to be interesting too is if they get into it, the subjects of the debate. Are we going to get into illegal immigration? Are we going to get into the UN and how the UN is involved in illegal immigration? Are we going to get involved? And Neil is asking about the fifth column. To give you kind of an example of what I mean by the fifth column is that we have a lot of influence by another country outside of the United States, and that is Israel. And Jamal Bowman is a very good example of what I mean by that. AIPAC, which is a super PAC that is funded by Israel, was heavily involved in that election, and it spent close to about $15 million, somewhere in that neighborhood, in his election to defeat him. That is really primarily why he lost. Not a lot of people know this or understand this. It's one thing for a PAC or super PAC or whatever it is to be involved, but from a PAC that is funded by Israel to unseat as much as I don't like the guy, and this is a primary, by the way, that is not a good thing. That is not a win for America. That is a win for a foreign country. We should not have foreign influence from a state of like Israel involved in the United States politics. And Donald Trump, for example, and I'll get back to the commenters here in a minute, but Miriam Adelson has given $100 million to Donald Trump's campaign. And her husband gave close to $500 million in total to the GOP. And their primary thing, they are Jewish, and their primary thing is Israel. They don't really care as much about the United States. So there is a lot of influence. There shouldn't be that kind of money, period, in politics. But there certainly shouldn't be that much money when it comes to a particular type of influence, when it comes to a particular type of state, which is Israel. And yeah, Bowman is a terrible candidate. However, $15 million in his campaign on TV ads is pretty significant for a House race. Pretty significant. And most people that really understand the politics and the behind all of the politics realize that he would not have been unseated if it wasn't for that kind of money. That was the most money spent in history, by the way, in that particular type of race. That was unheard of.
Tonight. Final thought, you were with Donald Trump during that New York Bragg sham trial. You were in there with watching Judge Juan Merchan. He's still under a partial gag order tonight. How much should lawfare come into play? We know the moderators won't go there, but Donald Trump certainly can, Mr. Paxson.
Welcome.
Yeah, it's 100% lawfare. Think about it. We have 4 different prosecutions of Donald Trump. He's never been prosecuted in his life, and suddenly, right before the election, he's a criminal. And you look at the charges that are being levied against him, they're ludicrous. And the way they're doing the trial is ludicrous. I sat there and watched how this judge operated. It's incredible that they put a gag order on a presidential candidate. I think it's unconstitutional, but it is happening.
Ken Paxton, by the way, is a whole different story on how they went after him.
Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton, a pleasure to have you right here on our pre-show, minutes away from this historic night. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
All right, now we're just about 5.5 minutes away. Let's check in with Trump donor and Chief Executive Officer, Chief Investment Officer for Key Square Group, Scott Bessent. Scott, great to have you with us.
Good. Bianca, John, thanks for having me.
Of course. It's been, interesting to see, and I think not surprising to a lot of folks, to see all the Trump donors come together. One of the places where we've seen him show us that he can be presidential, certainly, and unify.
Neil, you brought up something about Schumer and Netanyahu. Netanyahu is, again, there's so many things to talk about, but Netanyahu is keeping the war right now going on with Gaza because as soon as those wars are over, he's going to be investigated and potentially put in jail and brought up on charges. So the longer he keeps these wars going, he's just prolonging the inevitable, really, when it comes down to it. But no, Netanyahu is he's in a lot of trouble, and it's in his best interest to keep the wars going, and that in and of itself is a completely different thing. I mean, Schumer. There's video after video after video about Schumer saying that illegal immigration, we shouldn't have it, we shouldn't have this, we shouldn't have that. And of course, Schumer's getting paid. He's getting money. He's getting backed by Israel. A lot of this stuff when it comes to Jeffrey Epstein is a lot of people think that it's a Mossad, which is Israeli intelligence, similar to the CIA, that has everybody blackmailed. But yeah, I mean, Israel's involved in politics, whether it's, and of course, Netanyahu is part of it. But that's a whole different subject to get into. Yeah, I can get into a million different subjects with that, but yeah, there's definitely interference way beyond just the Bowman deal There's just a lot of money being put into American politics by AIPAC and by the state of Israel. What's going on with the college campuses, the protests, the cracking down on the protests, the presidents of the Ivy League schools getting pressure and getting kicked out of these Ivy League schools. There's that is pressure from Israel. There's a lot of stuff hidden behind the scenes. When it comes to Hamas, I don't really take a side on Hamas or Israel. You have to take your own side. My thing is that we shouldn't be giving money to Israel for the fighting. We shouldn't be involved in it at all. I hate seeing innocent kids dying. What's happening with Israel and what they're doing to Palestine or to Gaza is terrible. But the United States needs to be isolationist. We cannot be giving all this money to Israel. We cannot be giving all this money to Ukraine. I can go on in a million different subjects and I can talk forever, but the debate's going to be coming on soon and these guys are talking. Then we can get into this after the debate for sure. But Hamas is not going to surrender. And even if I don't think it makes a difference. I think that Israel's just going to. Their deal is that they're going to clear out Gaza and they're going to take it over. They're going to annex it. That's the whole thing. But my big thing is I don't care about either side. I care about the United States, and we should not be giving money to Israel. I think, Kazan, that Biden might get switched out only if he collapses and can no longer continue. Other than that, these people are so ridiculous that they're going to keep him in as long as they possibly can because they can control him. You can disagree, and you can disagree with me on October 7th, but what you don't know is, and there's a lot of reports that are coming out, is that Israel knew way ahead of time that October 7th was happening, it's called the Hannibal Accords, where something to that effect, Hannibal something, where Israel is okay with sacrificing its own citizens for the greater good of Israel. And so October 7th, and if you look it up, and there are a bunch of reports, and I can reference them, that Israel knew about the attack way ahead of time and did nothing about it in order to get Israeli citizens behind them in order to go after Gaza. You have to understand there's a lot of behind the scenes nasty stuff going on that causes all this stuff. You have to understand who benefits from these attacks. Why were these things allowed to happen? Why was this festival so close to an area that it shouldn't been? And I'm not going to get into the details of the reports, but I can assure you that there are several reports now that are coming out. And they're not just made up, some weirdo crazy person coming up with them. The debate's starting now, but that Israel did know about the attacks ahead of time.
Day. Good evening, I'm Dana Bash, anchor of CNN's Inside Politics and co-anchor of State of the Union.
I'm Jake Tapper, anchor of CNN's The Lead and co-anchor of State of the Union. Dana and I will co-moderate this evening. Our job is to facilitate a debate between the two candidates tonight. Before we introduce them, we want to share the rules of the debate with the audience at home. Former President Trump will be on the left side of the screen. President Biden will be appearing on the right. A coin toss determined their positions. Each candidate will have 2 minutes to answer a question and 1 minute each for responses and rebuttals. An additional minute for follow-up, clarification, or response is at the moderator's discretion.
When it's it's time for a candidate to speak, his microphone will be turned on and his opponent's microphone will be turned off. Should a candidate interrupt when his microphone is muted, he will be difficult to understand for viewers at home. At the end of the debate, each candidate will get 2 minutes for closing statements. There is no studio audience tonight. Pre-written notes, props, or contact with campaign staff are not permitted during the debate. By accepting our invitation to debate, both candidates and their campaigns agreed to accept these rules.
Now, please welcome the 46th President of the United States, Joe Biden.
How are you?
And please welcome the 45th President of the United States, Donald Trump. Gentlemen, thanks so much for being here. Let's begin the debate, and let's start with the issue that voters consistently say is their top concern, the economy. President Biden, inflation has slowed, but prices remain high. Since you took office, the price of essentials has increased. For example, a basket of groceries that cost $100 then now costs more than $120. And typical home prices have jumped more than 30%. What do you say to voters who feel they are worse off under your presidency than they were under President Trump?
We got to take a look at what I was left when I became president and what Mr. Trump left me. We had an economy that was in free fall. The pandemic was so badly handled. Many people were dying. All he said was, it's not that serious. Just inject a little bleach into your arm. You'll be all right. The economy collapsed. There were no jobs. Unemployment rate rose to 15%. It was terrible. And so what we had to do is try to put things back together again. And that's exactly what we began to do. We created 15,000 new jobs. We brought out the position where we have 800,000 new manufacturing jobs. But there's more to be done. There's more to be done. Working class people are still in trouble. I come from Scranton, Pennsylvania. I come of a household where the kitchen table, if the things weren't able to be met during the month, it was a problem. Price of eggs, the price of gas, the price of housing, the price of a whole range of things. That's why I'm working so hard to make sure I deal with those problems. That we're going to make sure that we reduce the price of housing. We're going to make sure we build 2 million new units. We're going to make sure we cap rents so corporate greed can't take over. The combination, what I was left with in corporate greed is the reason why we're in this problem right now.
See how long
in addition to that, we're in a situation where if you take a look at all that was done in his administration, he didn't do much at all. By the time he left, things were in chaos, literally chaos. And so we put things back together. We created, I said, those jobs. We make sure we had a situation where we brought down the price of prescription drugs, which is a major issue for many people, to $15 for an insulin shot as opposed to $400. No senior has to pay more than $200 for any drug, all the drugs they conclude beginning next year. And the situation is and we're going to make that available to everybody, to all Americans. So we're working to bring down the price around the kitchen table, and that's what we're going to get done.
Thank you. President Trump?
We have the greatest economy in the history of our country. We have never done so well. Everybody was amazed by it. Other countries were copying us. We got hit with COVID. And when we did, we spent the money necessary so we wouldn't end up in a Great Depression, the likes of which we had in 1929. By the time we finished, so we did a great job. We got a lot of credit for the economy, a lot of credit for the military, and no wars, and so many other things. Everything was rocking good. But the thing we never got the credit for, and we should have, is getting us out of that COVID mess. He created mandates that was a disaster for our country. But other than that, we had given them back a country where the stock market actually was higher than pre-COVID, and nobody thought that was even possible. The only jobs he created are for illegal immigrants and bounce-back jobs, the bounce-back from the COVID. He has not done a good job. He's done a poor job, and inflation's killing our country. It is absolutely killing us.
Thank you. President Biden?
Well, look, the greatest economy in the world world. He's the only one who thinks that, I think. I don't know anybody else who thinks he had the greatest economy in the world. And, you know, the fact of the matter is that we find ourselves in a situation where his economy, he rewarded the wealthy. He had the largest tax cut in American history, $2 trillion. He raised a deficit larger than any president has in any one term. He's the only president other than Herbert Hoover who's lost more jobs than he had when he began, since Herbert Hoover. The idea that he did something that was significant, and the military, you know, when he was president, they were still killing people in Afghanistan. He didn't do anything about that. When he was president, we were still finding ourselves in a position where you had a notion that we were this safe country. The truth is, I'm the only president this century that doesn't have this decade, that doesn't have any troops dying anywhere in the world like he did.
President Trump, I want to follow up if I can.
Am I allowed to respond to him?
Well, I'm going to ask you a follow-up. You can do whatever you want with the minute that we give you. I want to follow up. You want to impose a 10% tariff on all goods coming into the U.S. How will you ensure that that doesn't drive prices even higher?
It's not going to drive them higher. It's just going to cost countries that have been ripping us off for years, like China and many others, in all fairness to China. It's going to just force them to pay us a lot of money, reduce our deficit tremendously, and give us a lot of power for other things. But he made a statement. The only thing he was right about is I gave you the largest tax cut in history. I also gave you the largest regulation cut in history. That's why we had all the jobs. And the jobs went down, and then they bounced back, and he's taking credit for bounce back jobs. You can't do that. He also said he inherited 9% inflation. No, he inherited almost no inflation, and it stayed that way for 14 months, and then it blew up under his leadership because they spent money like a bunch of people that didn't know what they were doing, and they don't know what they were doing. It was the worst, probably the worst administration in history. There's never been. And as far as Afghanistan is concerned, I was getting out of Afghanistan, but we were getting out with dignity, with strength, with power. He got out. It was the most embarrassing day in the history of our country's life.
President Trump, over the last 8 years, under both of your administrations, the national debt soared to record highs. And according to a new nonpartisan analysis, President Trump, your administration approved $8.4 trillion in new debt, while so far, President Biden, you've approved $4.3 trillion in new debt. So, former President Trump, many of the tax cuts that you signed into law are set to expire next year. You want to extend them and go even further, you say. With the U.S. facing trillion-dollar deficits and record debt, why should top earners and corporations pay even less in taxes than they do now?
Because the tax cuts spurred the greatest economy that we've ever seen just prior to COVID. And even after COVID, it was so strong that we were able to get through COVID much better than just about any other country. But we spurred, that tax spurred. Now, when we cut the taxes, as an example, the corporate tax was cut down to 21% from 39%, plus beyond that. We took in more revenue with much less tax, and companies were bringing back trillions of dollars back into our country. The country was going like never before, and we were ready to start paying down debt. We were ready to start using the liquid gold right under our feet, the oil and gas right under our feet. We were going to have something that nobody else has had. We got hit with COVID. We did a lot to fix it. I gave him an unbelievable situation with all of the therapeutics and all of the things that we came up with. We gave him something great. Remember, more people died under his administration, even though we had largely fixed it. More people died under his administration than our administration, and we were right in the middle of it, something which a lot of people don't like to talk about. But he had far more people dying in his administration. He did the mandate, which is a disaster, mandating it. The vaccine went out. He did a mandate on the vaccine, which is the thing that people most objected to about the vaccine. And he did a very poor job, just a very poor job. And I will tell you, not only poor there, but throughout the entire world, we're no longer respected as a country. They don't respect our leadership. They don't respect the United States anymore. We're like a third world nation between weaponization of his election, trying to go after his political opponent, all of the things he's done. We've become like a third world nation, and it's a shame. The damage he's done to our country, and I'd love to ask him, and will, why he allowed millions of people to come in here from prisons, jails, and mental institutions to come into our country and destroy our country.
President Trump, we will get to immigration later in this block. President Biden, I want to give you an opportunity to respond to this question about the national debt.
He had the largest national debt of any president in a 4-year period, number one. Number two, that $2 trillion tax cut benefited the very wealthy. What I'm going to do is fix the tax system. For example, we have 1,000 trillionaires in America. Billionaires in America. And what's happening? They're in a situation where they, in fact, pay 8.2% in taxes. If they just paid 24% or 25%, either one of those numbers, they'd raise $500 billion, I should say, in a 10-year period. We'd be able to wipe out his debt. We'd be able to help make sure that all those things we need to do, child care, elder care, making sure that we continue to strengthen our health care system, making sure that we're able to make every single solitary person eligible for what I've been able to do with the COVID. Excuse me, with dealing with everything we have to do with. Look, we finally beat Medicare.
Thank you, President Biden. President Trump?
Well, he's right. He did beat Medicare. He beat it to death, and he's destroying Medicare because all of these people are coming in. They're putting them on Medicare. They're putting them on Social Security. They're going to destroy Social Security. This man is going to single-handedly destroy Social Security. These millions and millions of people coming in, they're trying to put them on Social Security. He will wipe out Social Security. He will wipe out Medicare. So he was right in the way he finished that sentence. And it's a shame. What's happened to our country in the last 4 years is not to be believed. Foreign countries, I'm friends with a lot of people. They cannot believe what happened to the United States of America. We're no longer respected. They don't like us. We give them everything they want, and they think we're stupid. They think we're very stupid people. What we're doing for other countries, and they do nothing for us. What this man has done is absolutely criminal.
Thank you, President Trump.
Just hammer him.
This is the first presidential election since the Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade. This morning, the court ruled on yet another abortion case, temporarily allowing emergency abortions to continue in Idaho, despite that state's restrictive ban. Former President Trump, you take credit for the decision to overturn Roe v. Wade, which returned the issue of abortion to the states.
Correct.
However, the federal government still plays a role in whether or not women have access to abortion pills. They're used in about 2/3 of all abortions. As president, would you block abortion medication?
First of all, the Supreme Court just approved the abortion pill, and I agree with their decision to have done that, and I will not block it. And if you look at this whole question that you're asking, complex but not really complex. 51 years ago, you had Roe v. Wade, and everybody wanted to get it back to the states. Everybody, without exception. Democrats, Republicans, liberals, conservatives, everybody wanted it back. Religious leaders. And what I did is I put 3 great Supreme Court justices on the court, and they happened to vote in favor of killing Roe v. Wade and moving it back to the states. This is something that everybody wanted. Now, 10 years ago or so, they started talking about how many weeks and how many this, getting into other things. But every legal scholar throughout the world, the most respected, wanted it brought back to the states. I did that. Now the states are working it out. If you look at Ohio, it was a decision that was an end result that was a little bit more liberal than you would have thought. Kansas, I would say the same thing. Texas is different. Florida is different. But they're all making their own decisions right now. And right now, the states control it. That's the vote of the people. Like Ronald Reagan, I believe in the exceptions. I am a person that believes. And frankly, I think it's important to believe in the exceptions. Some people, you have to follow your heart. Some people don't believe in that. But I believe in the exceptions for rape, incest, and the life of the mother. I think it's very important. Some people don't. Follow your heart. But you have to get elected also, and because that has to do with other things. You got to get elected. The problem they have is they're radical because they will take the life of a child in the 8th month, the 9th month, and even after birth. After birth, if you look at the former governor of Virginia, he was willing to do this. He said, we'll put the baby aside and we'll determine what we do with the baby, meaning we'll kill the baby. What happened is we brought it back to the states, and the country is now coming together on this issue. It's been a great thing.
Thank you. President Biden?
It's been a terrible thing, what you've done. The fact is that the vast majority of constitutional scholars supported Roe when it was decided. Supported Roe. And that's this idea that they're all against it is just ridiculous. And this is the guy who says the state should be able to have it. We're in a state where in 6 weeks, you don't even know whether you're pregnant or not, but you cannot see a doctor and have him decide on what your circumstances are, whether you need help. The idea that states are able to do this is a little like saying we're going to turn civil rights back to the states, let each state have a different rule. Look, there's so many young women who have been, including a young woman who just was murdered, and he went to the funeral. The idea that she was murdered by an immigrant coming in, they talk about that. But here's the deal: there's a lot of young women who are being raped by their in-laws, by their spouses, brothers and sisters. It's just ridiculous, and they can do nothing about it. And they try to arrest them when they cross state lines.
Thank you.
There have been many young women
murdered
by the same people he allows to come across our border. We have a border that's the most dangerous place anywhere in the world. Consider the most dangerous place anywhere in the world. And he opened it up, and these killers are coming into our country, and they are raping and killing women. And it's a terrible thing. As far as the abortion is concerned, it is now back with the states. The states are voting. In many cases, it's frankly a very liberal decision. In many cases, it's the opposite. But they're voting, and it's bringing it back to the vote of the people, which is what everybody wanted, including the founders, if they knew about this issue, which frankly they didn't. But they would have. Everybody wanted brought back. Ronald Reagan wanted it brought back. He wasn't able to get it. Everybody wanted it brought back, and many presidents had tried to get it back. I was the one to do it. And again, this gives it the vote of the people, and that's where they wanted it. Every legal scholar wanted it that way.
Staying on the topic of abortion, President Biden, 7 states, I'll let you do that. This is the same topic. 7 states have no legal restrictions on how far into a pregnancy a woman can obtain an abortion. Do you support any legal limits on how late a woman should be able to terminate a pregnancy?
I support Roe v. Wade, which had 3 trimesters. The first time is between the woman and the doctor. Second time is between the doctor and an extreme situation. The third time is between the doctor, between the woman and the state. The idea that the politicians, that the founders wanted the politicians to be the ones making decisions about women's health is ridiculous. That's the last. No politician should be making that decision. A doctor should be making those decisions. That's how it should be run. That's what you're going to do. And if I'm elected, I'm going to restore Roe v. Wade.
So that means he can take the life of the baby in the 9th month and even after birth, because some states, Democrat run, take it after birth. Again, the former governor of Virginia, put the baby down, then we decide what to do with it. So he's willing to, as we say, rip the baby out of the womb in the 9th month and kill the baby. Nobody wants that to happen, Democrat or Republican. Nobody wants it to happen.
You're lying. That is simply not true. The Roe v. Wade does not provide for that. That's not the circumstance. Only if a woman's life is in danger, she's going to die. That's the only circumstance in which that can happen. But we are not for late-term abortion, period. Period.
I had a feeling this was going to be bad, but I didn't think it was going to be this bad.
You can do whatever you want, depending on the state. You can do whatever you want. We don't think that's a good thing. We think it's a radical thing. We think the Democrats are the radicals, not the Republicans.
For 51 years, that was the law. 51 years, constitutional scholarship said it was the right way to go. 51 years, and it was taken away because this guy put very conservative members on the Supreme Court.
Every single Biden is on drugs.
Takes credit for taking it away. What's he going to do? What's he going to do? In fact, if the MAGA Republicans, he gets elected, and the MAGA Republicans control the Congress, and they pass a universal ban on abortion, period, across the board at 6 weeks or 7 or 8 or 10 weeks, something very, very conservative. Is he going to sign that bill? I'll veto it. He'll sign it.
Thank you.
Let's turn now to the issue of immigration and border security. President Biden, a record number of migrants have illegally crossed the southern border on your watch. Overwhelming border states and overburdening cities such as New York and Chicago, and in some cases causing real safety and security concerns. Given that, why should voters trust you to solve this crisis?
Because we worked very hard to get a bipartisan agreement that not only changed all of that, it made sure that we are in a situation where you had no circumstance circumstance where they could come across the border with the number of border police there are now. We significantly increased the number of asylum officers. Significantly, by the way, the Border Patrol endorsed my position. In addition to that, we found ourselves in a situation where, when he was president, he was separating babies from their mothers, putting them in cages, making sure the families were separated. That's not the right way to go. What I've done since I've changed the law, what's happened, I've changed it in a way that now you're in a situation where there are 40% fewer people coming across the border illegally. That's better than when he left office. And I'm going to continue to move until we get the total ban.
This is embarrassing to watch.
The total initiative relative to what we're going to do with more Border Patrol and more asylum officers.
President Trump?
I really don't know what he said at the end of that sentence. I don't think he knows what he said either. Look, we had the safest border in the history of our country. The border, all he had to do was leave it. All he had to do was leave it. He decided to open up our border, open up our country to people that are from prisons, people that are from mental institutions, insane asylum, terrorists. We have the largest number of terrorists coming into our country right now, all terrorists, all over the world, not just in South America, all over the world. They come from the Middle East, everywhere. All over the world, they're pouring in. And this guy just left it open. And he didn't need legislation because I didn't have legislation. I said, close the border. We had the safest border in history. In that final couple of months of my presidency, we had, according to Border Patrol, who is great, and by the way, who endorsed me for president, but I won't say that, but they endorsed me for president. Brandon, just speak to him. But look, we had the safest border in history. Now we have the worst border in history. There's never been anything like it. And people are dying all over the place, including the people that are coming up in caravans.
President Trump. President Biden?
The only terrorist who's done anything crossing the border is one who came along and killed three, under his administration, killed an Al-Qaeda person coming in, and his administration, killed three American soldiers, killed 3 American soldiers. That's the only terrorist that's there. I'm not saying that no terrorist ever got through, but the idea they're emptying their prisons, we're welcoming these people, that's simply not true. There's no data to support what he said. Once again, he's exaggerating, he's lying.
Oh my God.
President Trump, staying on the topic of immigration, you've said that you're going to carry out, quote, the largest domestic deportation operation in American history, unquote. Does that mean that you will deport every undocumented immigrant in America, including those who have jobs, including those whose spouses are citizens, and including those who have lived here for decades? And if so, how will you do it?
Just 1 second. He said we killed 3 people. The people we killed are al-Baghdadi and Soleimani, the 2 greatest terrorists, biggest terrorists anywhere in the world, and it had a huge impact on everything, not just border, on everything. He's the one that killed people with the bad water, including hundreds of thousands of people dying, and also killing our citizens when they come in. We are living right now in a rat's nest. They're killing our people in New York, in California, in every state in the union, because we don't have borders anymore. Every state is now a border. And because of his ridiculous, insane, and very stupid policies, people are coming in and they're killing our citizens at a level that we've never seen. We call it migrant crime. I call it Biden migrant crime. They're killing our citizens at a level that we've never seen before. And you're reading it like these 3 incredible young girls over the last few days. One of them, I just spoke to the mother, and they just had the funeral for this girl, 12 years old. This is horrible what's taken place. What's taken place in our country, we're literally an uncivilized country now. He doesn't want it to be. He just doesn't know. He opened the borders. Nobody's ever seen anything like. And we have to get a lot of these people out, or we have to get them out fast, because they're going to destroy our country. Just take a look at where they're living. They're living in luxury hotels in New York City and other places. Our veterans are on the street. They're dying because he doesn't care about our veterans. He doesn't care. He doesn't like the military at all, and he doesn't care about our veterans. Nobody been worse. I had the highest approval rating for veterans taking care of the VA. He has the worst. He's gotten rid of all the things that I approved. Choice that I got through Congress, all of the different things I approved, they abandoned. We had by far the highest, and now it's down in less than half, because he's done all these great things that we did, and I think he did it just because I approved it, which is crazy. But he has killed so many people at our border by allowing all of these people to come in. And it's a very sad day in America.
President Biden, you have the mic.
Every single thing he said is a lie. every single one. For example, veterans are a hell of a lot better off since I passed the PACT Act. 1 million of them now have insurance, and their families have it. Their families have it because what happened, whether it was Agent Orange or burn pits, they're all being covered now. And his group opposed that. We're also in a situation where we have great respect for veterans. My son spent a year in Iraq, living right next to one of those burn pits, came back with stage 4 glioblastoma. I was recently in France for D-Day, and I spoke all about those heroes that died. I went to the World War I cemetery he refused to go to. He was standing with his 4-star general, and he told me, he said, I don't want to go in there because they're a bunch of losers and suckers. My son was not a loser, was not a sucker. You're the sucker. You're the loser.
President Trump. Here we go.
First of all, that was a made-up quote, suckers and losers. They made it up. It was in a third-rate magazine that's failing, like many of these magazines. He made that up. He put it in commercials. We've notified him. We had 19 people that said I didn't say it. And think of this. Who would say I'm at a cemetery or I'm talking about our veterans? Because nobody's taking better care. I'm so glad this came up, and he brought it up. There's nobody that's taken better care of our soldiers than I have. To think that I would, in front of generals and others, say suckers and losers. We have 19 people that said it was never said by me.
All they can do
it was made up by him, just like Russia was made up, just like the 51 intelligence agents are made up, just like the new thing with the 16 economists are talking. It's the same thing. 51 intelligence agents said that the laptop was Russia disinformation. It wasn't. That came from his son, Hunter. It wasn't Russia disinformation. He made up the suckers and losers, so he should apologize to me right now.
4-star general standing to your side who was on your staff who said you said it, period. That's number one. And number two, the idea that I have to apologize to you for anything along the line. We've done more for veterans than any president has in American history. And they now are in their family. The only sacred obligation we have as a country is to care for our veterans when they come home and their families and equip them when they go to war. That's what we're doing. That's what the VA is doing now. They're doing more for veterans than ever before in our history.
All right, thank you so much.
Let's move to the topic of foreign policy. I want to begin with Russia's war against Ukraine, which is now in its third year.
Cut his mic off. They'll
Former
cut
President
Trump's
Trump,
off,
Russian President Vladimir Putin says he'll only end this war if Russia keeps the Ukrainian territory it has already claimed and Ukraine abandons its bid to join NATO. Are Putin's terms acceptable to you?
First of all, our veterans and our soldiers can't stand this guy. They can't stand him. They think he's the worst commander-in-chief, if that's what you call him, that we've ever had. They can't stand him. So let's get that straight. And they like me more than just about any of them. And that's based on every single bit of information. As far as Russia and Ukraine, if we had a real president, a president that knew, that was respected by Putin, he would have never invaded Ukraine. A lot of people are dead right now, much more than people know. You know, they talk about numbers. You can double those numbers, maybe triple those numbers. He did nothing to stop it. In fact, I think he encouraged Russia from going in. I'll tell you what happened. He was so bad with Afghanistan. It was such a horrible embarrassment, most embarrassing moment in the history of our country, that when Putin watched that and he saw the incompetence, that he should have fired those generals, like I fired the one that you mentioned. And so he's got no love lost. But he should have fired those generals. No general got fired for the most embarrassing moment in the history of our country, Afghanistan, where we left billions of dollars of equipment behind. We lost 13 beautiful soldiers, and 38 soldiers were obliterated. And by the way, we left people behind, too. We left American citizens behind. When Putin saw that, he said, you know what? I think we're going to go in and maybe take this was his dream. I talked to him about it, his dream. The difference is he never would have invaded Ukraine. Never. Just like Israel would have never been invaded in a million years by Hamas. You know why? Because Iran was broke with me. I wouldn't let anybody do business with them. They ran out of money. They were broke. They had no money for Hamas. They had no money for anything. No money for terror. That's why you had no terror at all during my administration. This place, the whole world is blowing up under him.
President Biden?
This is bad.
I've never heard so much malarkey in my whole life. Look, the fact of the matter is that we're in a situation where, let's take the last point first. Iran attacked American troops, caused brain damage for a number of these troops, and he did nothing about it. Recently, when he was president, they attacked. He said they're just having headaches. That's all it is. But he didn't do a thing when the attack took place, number one. Number two, we got over 100,000 Americans and others out of Afghanistan during that airlift. Number three, we found ourselves in a situation where if you take a look at what Trump did in Ukraine, this guy told Trump, do whatever you want, and do whatever you want. And that's exactly what Trump did to Putin, encourage him, do whatever you want. And he went in. And listen to what he said when he went in. He was going to take Kyiv in 5 days, remember? Because it's part of the old Soviet Union. That's what he wanted to reestablish, Kyiv. And he, in fact, didn't do it at all. He wasn't able to get it done. And they've lost thousands and thousands of troops, 500,000 troops.
President Trump,
I never said that.
For 1 minute, I just want to go back to my original question, which is, are Putin's terms acceptable to you? Keeping the territory in Ukraine?
Acceptable. No, they're not acceptable. But look, this is a war that never should have started. If we had a leader in this war, he led everybody along. He's given $200 billion now or more to Ukraine. He's given $200 billion. That's a lot of money. I don't think there's ever been anything like it. Every time that Zelensky comes to this country, he walks away with $60 billion. He's the greatest salesman ever. And I'm not knocking him. I'm not knocking anything. I'm only saying the money that we're spending on this war, and we shouldn't be spending, it should have never happened. I will have that war settled between Putin and Zelensky as president-elect before I take office on January 20th. I'll have that war settled. People being killed so needlessly, so stupidly, and I will get it settled, and I'll get it settled fast before I take office.
President Biden, you have a minute.
The fact is that Putin is a war criminal. He's killed thousands and thousands of people. And he has made one thing clear. He wants to reestablish what was part of the Soviet Empire, not just a piece. He wants all of Ukraine. That's what he wants. And then you think he'll stop there? Do you think he'll stop when if he takes Ukraine? Deeper. What do you think happens to Poland? What do you think of Belarus? What do you think happens to those NATO countries? And so if you want a war, you ought to find out what he's going to do, because if in fact he does what he says and walks away, and by the way, all that money we give Ukraine are from weapons we make here in the United States. We give them the weapons, not the money at this point. And our NATO allies have produced as much funding for Ukraine as we have. That's why we're strong.
Thank you. Moving on to the Middle East. In October, Hamas attacked Israel, killing more than 1,000 people and taking hundreds of hostages. Among those held and thought to still be alive are 5 Americans. Israel's response has killed thousands of Palestinians and created a humanitarian crisis in Gaza. President Biden, you've put forward a proposal to resolve this conflict, but so far Hamas has not released the remaining hostages, and Israel is continuing its military offensive in Gaza. So what additional leverage will you use to get Hamas and Israel to end the war? You have 2 minutes.
Number one, everyone from the United Nations Security Council straight through to the G7 to the Israelis and Netanyahu himself have endorsed the plan I put forward, which has 3 stages to it. The first stage is trade the hostages for a ceasefire. Second phase is a ceasefire with additional conditions. The third phase is the end of the war. The only one who wants the war to continue is Hamas, number one. They're the only ones standing out. We're still pushing hard to get them to accept. In the meantime, what's happened in Israel, we're finding that the only thing I've denied Israel was 2,000-pound bombs. They don't work very well in populated areas. They kill a lot of innocent people. We're providing Israel with all the weapons they need and when they need them. And by the way, I'm the guy that organized the world against Iran when they had a full-blown intercontinental ballistic missile attack on Israel. No one was hurt. No one Israeli was accidentally killed, and it just stopped. We saved Israel. We are the biggest producer of support for Israel of anyone in the world. And so they're two different things. Hamas cannot be allowed to be continued. We continue to send our experts and our intelligence people as to how they can get Hamas like we did bin Laden. You don't have to do it. And by the way, they've been greatly weakened, Hamas, greatly weakened, and they should be. They should be eliminated.
Can't take care of themselves.
But you've got to be careful for using certain weapons among population centers.
Just going back to Ukraine for 1 second. We have an ocean separating us. The European nations together have spent $100 billion, or maybe more than that, less than us. Why doesn't he call them and say, you got to put up your money like I did with NATO? I got them to put up hundreds of billions of dollars. The Secretary General of NATO said Trump did the most incredible job I've ever seen. They wouldn't have any. They were going out of business. We were spending almost 100% of the money was paid by us. He didn't do that. He's getting all. You got to ask these people to put up the money. We're over $100 billion more spent, and it has a bigger impact on them because of location, because we have an ocean in between. You got to ask them. As far as Israel and Hamas, Israel's the one that wants to go. He said the only one who wants to keep going is Hamas. Actually, Israel is the one, and you should let him go and let him finish the job. He doesn't want to do it. He's become like a Palestinian, but they don't like him because he's a very bad Palestinian. He's a weak one.
President Biden, you have a minute.
I've never heard so much foolishness. This is a guy who wants to get out of NATO. You're going to stay in NATO? And you're going to pull out of NATO. The idea that we have, our strength lies in our alliances as well. It may be a big ocean, but we're ever able to avoid a war in Europe, a major war in Europe? What happens if, in fact, you have Putin continue to go into NATO? We have an Article 5 agreement. Attack on one is attack on all. You want to start the nuclear war he keeps talking about, go ahead. Let Putin go in and control Ukraine and then move on to Poland and other places. See what happens then. He has no idea what the hell he's talking about. And by the way, I got 50 other nations around the world to support Ukraine, including Japan and South Korea, because they understand that this kind of dislocation has a serious threat to the whole world peace. No major war in Europe has ever been able to be contained just to Europe.
President Trump, just to follow up, would you support the creation of an independent Palestinian state in order to achieve peace in the region?
I'd have to see, but before we do that, the problem we have is that we spend all the money. So they kill us on trade. I made great trade deals with the European nations because if you add them up, they're about the same size economically. Their economy is about the same size as the United States. And they were no cars, no, they don't want anything that we have. But we're supposed to take their cars, their food, their everything, their agriculture. I changed that. But the big thing I changed is they don't want to pay. And the only reason that he can play games with NATO is because I got them to put up hundreds of billions of dollars. I said, and he's right about this, I said, no, I'm not going to support NATO if you don't pay. They asked me that question, would you guard us against Russia at a very secret meeting of the 28 states at that time, nations at that time? And I said, no, if you don't pay, I won't do that. And you know what happened? Billions and billions of dollars came flowing in the next day and the next months. But now we're in the same position. We're paying everybody's bills.
Let's turn to the issue of democracy. Former President Trump, I want to ask you about January 6, 2021. After you rallied your supporters that day, some of them stormed the Capitol to stop the constitutionally mandated counting of electoral votes. As president, you swore an oath to, quote, preserve, protect, and defend, unquote, the Constitution. What do you say to voters who believe that you violated that oath through your actions and inaction on January 6th and worry that you'll do it again?
Well, I don't think too many believe that. And let me tell you about January 6th. On January 6th, we had a great border. Nobody coming through, very few. On January 6th, we were energy independent. On January 6th, we had the lowest taxes ever. We had the lowest regulations ever. On January 6th, we were respected all over the world. All over the world, we were respected. And then he comes in, and we're now laughed at. We're like a bunch of stupid people. What happened to the United States' reputation under this man's leadership is horrible, including weaponization, which I'm sure at some point you'll be talking about, where he goes after his political opponent because he can't beat him fair and square.
You have 80 seconds left. My question was, what do you say to those voters who believe that you violated your constitutional oath through your actions and inaction on January 6, 2021, and worry that you'll do it again?
Well, I didn't say that to anybody.
No, but
I said peacefully and patriotically. And Nancy Pelosi, if you just watched the news from 2 days ago, on tape to her daughter, who's a documentary filmmaker, they say, but she's saying, oh, no, it's my responsibility. I was responsible for this. Because I offered her 10,000 soldiers or National Guard, and she turned them down. And the mayor in writing, by the way, the mayor, in writing, turned it down, the mayor of D.C. They turned it down. I offered 10,000 because I could see, I had virtually nothing to do. They asked me to go make a speech. I could see what was happening. Everybody was saying they're going to be there on January 6th. They're going to be there. And I said, you know what? There's a lot of people coming. You could feel it.
CNN
you could feel
trying
it too,
to
and you could feel it.
to push a
and
lie,
I said,
just like
they
they
ought to
did
have
with the
some
Russian collusion
National
hoax.
Guard or whatever. And I offered it to her, and she now admits that she turned it down. And it was the same day she was, I don't know, she can't be very happy with her daughter because it made her into a liar. She said, I take full responsibility for January 6th.
Yep. President Biden?
Look, he encouraged those folks to go up to Capitol Hill, number one. I sat in the dining room off the Oval Office. He sat there for 3 hours watching, begging, being begged by his vice president and a number of his colleagues on the Republican side as well to do something, to call for a stop, to end it. Instead, they talked about these people being patriots and great patrons of America. In fact, he says he'll not forgive them for what they've done. They've been convicted. He says he wants to commute their sentences and say that, you know, but he went to every single court in the nation. I don't know how many cases, scores of cases, including the Supreme Court, and they said, no, this guy is responsible for doing what was done. He didn't do a damn thing, and these people should be in jail, and they should be the ones who are being held accountable. And he wants to let them all out, and now he says if he loses again, such a whiner that he is, that it could be a bloodbath.
Thank you, President Biden. President Trump?
What they've done to some people that are so innocent, you ought to be ashamed of yourself.
Yes.
What you have done, how you've destroyed the lives of so many people. When they ripped down Portland, when they ripped down many other cities, you go to Minnesota, Minneapolis, what they've done there with the fires all over the city. If I didn't bring in the National Guard, that city would have been destroyed. When you look at all of they took over big chunks of Seattle. I was all set to bring in the National Guard. They heard that. They saw them coming, and they left immediately. What he said about this whole subject is so off. Peacefully patriotic. One other thing. The Unselect Committee, which is basically two horrible Republicans that are all gone now, out of office, and Democrats, all Democrats, they destroyed and deleted all of the information they found because they found out we were right. We were right. And they deleted and destroyed all of the information. They should go to jail for that. If a Republican did that, they'd go to jail.
Thank you, President Trump. President Biden, I want to give you a minute.
The only person on this stage is a convicted felon. Is the man
we knew that was coming. We knew that was coming.
The fact of the matter is, what he's telling you is simply not true. The fact is that there was no effort on his part to stop what was going on up in Capitol Hill. And all those people, every one of those who were convicted, deserves to be convicted. The idea that they didn't kill somebody, just went in and broke down doors, broke the windows, occupied offices, turned over desks, turned them over statues. The idea that those people are patriots? Come on. When I asked him the first two debates we had, first time around,
I would have bet that
I said, will you denounce the Proud Boys? He said, no, I'll tell them to stand by. The idea he's refusing, will you denounce these guys? Will you denounce the people we're talking about now? Will you denounce the people who attacked that Capitol? What are you going to do?
I'm going to give you a minute, President Trump, for a follow-up question I have. After a jury convicted you of 34 felonies last month, you said if reelected, you would, quote, have every right to go after, unquote, your political opponents. You just talked about members of the Select Committee on January 6th going to jail. Your main political opponent is standing on stage with you tonight. Can you clarify exactly what it means about you feeling you have every right to go after your political opponents?
Well, I said my retribution is going to be success. We're going to make this country successful again, because right now it's a failing nation. My retribution is going to be success. But when he talks about a convicted felon, his son is a convicted felon at a very high level. His son is convicted, going to be convicted probably numerous other times. Should have been convicted before, but his Justice Department let the statute of limitations lapse on the most important things. But he could be a convicted felon as soon as he gets out of office. Joe could be a convicted felon with all of the things that he's done. He's done horrible things. All of the death caused at the border, telling the Ukrainian people that we're going to want $1 billion or you change the prosecutor. Otherwise, you're not getting $1 billion. If I ever said that, that's quid pro quo. That we're not going to do anything. We're not going to give you $1 billion unless you change your prosecutor, having to do with the son. This man is a criminal.
Using the justice system
this man,
against
you're
a political
lucky. You're
opponent.
lucky. I did nothing wrong. We'd have a system that was rigged and disgusting. I did nothing wrong.
Thank you, President Trump. President Biden, you have said, I'm coming right to you, sir. You want to respond? Go ahead. I'll give you a minute to respond.
The idea that I did anything wrong relative to what you're talking about is outrageous. It's simply a lie, number one. Number two, the idea that you have a right to seek retribution against any American just because you're president is wrong. It's simply wrong. No president's ever spoken like that before. No president in our history has spoken like that before.
Even the dumbest human beings on the planet realize
the crimes that you are still charged with. And think of all the civil penalties you have. How many billions of dollars do you owe in civil penalties for molesting a woman in public, for doing a whole range of things, of having sex with a porn star on the night while your wife was pregnant? I mean, what are you talking about? You have the morals of an alley cat.
What a scumbag.
Sir.
I didn't have sex with a porn star, number one. Number two, that was a case that was started and moved. They moved a high-ranking official, a DOJ, into the Manhattan DA's office to start that case. That case is going to be appealed and won. We had a very terrible judge, a horrible judge, Democrat. The prosecutor were all high-ranking Democrats, appointed people, and both the civil and the criminal.
Malicious
he basically went after his political opponent because he thought it was going to damage me. But when the public found out about these cases, because they understand it better than he does, he has no idea what these cases are.
Yeah, he does.
When they found out about these cases, you know what they did? My poll numbers went up way up. You know that because you're reporting it. And we took in more money in the last 2 weeks than we've ever taken in the history of any campaign. I don't think any campaign has ever taken. Hundreds of millions of dollars came pouring in because the public knows it's a scam and it's a guy that's after his political opponent because he can't win fair and square.
Bingo.
Thank you, President Trump. President Biden, you have said, quote, Donald Trump and his MAGA Republicans are determined to destroy American democracy. Do you believe that the tens of millions of Americans who are likely to vote for President Trump will be voting against American democracy?
The more they know about what he's done, yes. The more they know about what he's done. And there's a lot more coming. He's got a lot of cases down the road coming around. He's got a whole range
how do you know
of
about
issues he
that,
has to
Biden?
face. I don't know what the juries will do, but I do know he has a real problem.
You're the one who created
and
this
so
whole
the
thing.
fact that, could you ever think you heard any president say that I'm going to seek retribution? Do you ever hear any president say that I thought Hitler had some good ideas? What got me involved to run in the first place after my son had died, I decided in Iraq, because of Iraq, I said I wasn't going to run again. Until I saw what happened in Charlottesville, Virginia. People coming out of the woods carrying
Another lie.
swastikas
Charlottesville
on torches,
is another lie.
and singing the same anti-Semitic bile they sang when back in Germany. And the young woman got killed. I spoke to the mother, and they asked him. They said, "What do you think of those people? The ones who got killed, the one who tried to stop it, and the ones," he said, "I think they're fine people on both sides." What American president would ever say?
Once again, taken out of
Nazis
context.
coming out of fields, carrying torches, singing the same anti-Semitic bile, carrying swastikas, were fine people. And this is a guy who says Hitler's done some good things. I'd like to know what they are. The good things Hitler's done, that's what he said. This guy has no sense of American democracy.
President Trump.
Jake, both of you know that story has been totally wiped out because when you see the sentence, it said 100% exoneration on this. So he just keeps it going. He says he ran because of Charlottesville. He didn't run because of Charlottesville. He ran because it was his last chance.
Exactly.
He's not equipped to be president. You know it, and I know it. It's ridiculous. We have a debate. We're trying to justify his presidency. His presidency is, without question, the worst president, the worst presidency in the history of our country. We shouldn't be having a debate about it. There's nothing to debate. He made up the Charlottesville story, and you'll see it's debunked all over the place. Every anchor has, every reasonable anchor has debunked it. And just the other day, it came out where it was fully debunked. It's a nonsense story. He knows that, and he didn't run because of Charlottesville. He used that as an excuse to run.
President Biden?
And debunked. It happened. All you have to do is listen to what was said at the time. And the idea that somehow that's the only reason I ran. I ran because I was worried a guy like this guy could get elected. If he thought they were good people coming out of that forest, carrying those woods, carrying those torches, then he didn't deserve to be president. Didn't deserve to be president at all. And the idea that he's talking about all this being fabricated, we saw with our own eyes. We saw what happened on January 6th.
Everything is fabricated.
We saw the people breaking through the windows. We saw people occupying his own vice president. Look, there's a reason why 40 of his 44 top cabinet officers refused to endorse him this time. His vice president hasn't endorsed him this time. So why? Why? They know him well. They serve with him. Why are they not endorsing him?
Because they're pussies.
Thank you, President Biden. We're going to be right back with more from the CNN presidential debate.
Okay, stupid question. Who's winning right now? Yes, Kazan, find people hoax. All of these things have been debunked, like Trump said. I think Trump is handling himself perfectly. This is probably the easiest debate that anyone can possibly have. Even CNN is cutting off Joe Biden because they realize that if he continues to ramble on, it's going to be 10 times worse than it already is. And it's going to get a lot worse, I think. I don't know how much longer this is going to go, but this is terrible. But yeah, addressing the earpiece. I'm not sure if Biden has an earpiece, but I can say there's no question that he got the questions ahead of time. Donna Brazile admitted that during the 2016 election that Hillary Clinton got the questions ahead of time, but it really doesn't matter because Joe Biden, you can give him, even if he had an earpiece, the guy can't even speak. But yeah, sooner or later, the longer this drags on, the worse that Biden's going to get. But it's already terrible. I mean, there's no possible way that you can spin this in a positive way at all. But I want to go back to, I don't know if Neil is still here, but Neil had said after what transpired on October 7th, you can't take a side. And my thing is that even if Hamas gave up, it was said in this debate, and it's true, that Israel would continue to wipe out Gaza anyway. And my thing right now with Trump is that but again, Trump is the only person we have, is our loyalty with Israel and giving as much money as we are to Israel. It's bad enough that we're giving the money that we're giving to Ukraine. That in and of itself is a problem. The whole NATO situation is a problem. And again, it's a completely different subject to get into, and we can get into that later on. I can even start a spaces on Twitter to discuss that in detail. But, at some point, there needs to be an end to this. And Putin wanted to put an end to this, but the United States does not want to have an end. Way back when the former Prime Minister of Britain, he got involved, Boris Johnson, and stopped the talks to put an end to the Ukraine war. And a lot of this has to do with this. I mean, what is this obsession that we have with Ukraine? What is this obsession that we have with Russia? And I'll talk about that later, but we're going to get back into the debate.
Your presidency, Black families still earn far less than white families. Black mothers are still 3 times more likely to die from pregnancy-related causes, and Black Americans are imprisoned at
Israel
5 times
wins.
the rate of white Americans.
That's the
What do you say to Black voters who are disappointed that you haven't made more progress?
They acknowledge they made a lot of progress, number one. The fact of the matter is there's more small Black businesses that have been started than any time in history. Number two, the wages of Black unemployment is the lowest level it's been in a long, long time. Number three, we're providing housing for Black Americans and dealing with the segregation that exists among these corporations that collude to keep people out of their houses. And in addition to that, we find that the impact of
get that one?
The choice that Black families have to make relative to child care is incredibly difficult. When we did the first major piece of legislation in the past, I was able to reduce Black child care costs. I cut them in half. We got to make sure we provide for child care costs. We got to make sure, because when you provide those child care protections, you increase economic growth because more people can be in the job market. So there's more to be done, considerably more to be done. But we've done a great deal so far, and I'm not letting up, and they know it.
You have 49 seconds left. What do you say to Black voters who are disappointed with the progress so far?
I say I don't blame them for being disappointed. Inflation is still hurting them badly. For example, I provided for the idea that any Black family, first-time home buyer, should get a $10,000 tax credit to be able to buy their first home so they can get started. I made sure that we're in a situation where all those Black families and those Black individuals who provided had to take out student loans that were ballooning, that if they were engaged in nursing, doctor, and anything having to do with volunteerism, if they paid their bills for 10 years on their student debt, all the rest is forgiven after 10 years. Millions have benefited from that, and we're going to do a whole lot more for Black families.
Thank you, President Trump.
And he caused the inflation. He's blaming inflation, and he's right, it's been very bad. He caused the inflation, and it's killing Black families and Hispanic families and just about everybody. It's killing people. They can't buy groceries anymore. They can't. You look at the cost of food where it's doubled and tripled and quadrupled. They can't live. They're not living anymore. He caused this inflation. I gave him a country with essentially no inflation. It was perfect. It was so good. All he had to do is leave it alone. He destroyed it with his Green New scam and all this money that's being thrown out the window. He caused inflation. As sure as you're sitting there, the fact is that his big kill on the Black people is the millions of people that he's allowed to come in through the border. They're taking Black jobs now, and it could be 18, it could be 19, and even 20 million people. They're taking Black jobs, and they're taking Hispanic jobs, and you haven't seen it yet.
They're taking white
You're
jobs
see
too. Can we talk about white people?
The worst in our history.
Is it a crime to talk about whites?
There was no inflation.
We talk about everybody else, but we never talk about white people. We never talk about what's happening to white people.
50% unemployment. He decimated the economy, absolutely decimated the economy. That's why there was no inflation at the time. There were no jobs. We provided thousands of millions of jobs for individuals who are in all communities, including minority communities. We made sure that they have health insurance. We have covered, the ACA has increased. I made sure that there are $8,000 per person in a family to get written off for health care. But this guy wants to eliminate that. They tried 50 times. He wants to get rid of the ACA again, and they're going to try again if they win. in. We find ourselves in a position where the idea that we're not doing anything, I've put more,
exactly.
we put more police on the street than any administration has.
Talk about anything
he
white,
wants to
you're
cut
racist.
the cops. We're providing for equity and making sure people have a shot to make it. There's a lot going on, but in inflation, he caused it by his tremendous malfeasance in the way he handled the pandemic.
Thank you. Another persistent challenge is the climate crisis. 2023 was the hottest year in recorded history, and communities across the country are confronting the devastating effects of extreme heat, intensifying wildfires, stronger hurricanes, and rising sea levels. Former President Trump, you've vowed to end your opponent's climate initiatives, but will you take any action as president to slow the climate crisis?
Well, let me just go back to what he said about the police, how close the police are to him. Almost every police group in the nation from every state is supporting Donald J. Trump. Almost every police group. And what he's done to the black population is horrible, including the fact that for 10 years he called them super predators. We can't, in the 1990s, we can't forget that. Right. Super predators was his name, and he called it to them for 10, and they've taken great offense at it, and now they see it happening. But when they see what I did for criminal justice reform and for the historically black colleges and universities, where I funded them and got them all funded, and the opportunity zones with Tim, as you know, Tim Scott was incredible. He did a great job. Great senator from South Carolina. He came to me with the idea, and it was a great idea. It's one of the most successful economic development acts ever in the country, opportunity zones. And the biggest beneficiary are blacks. And that's why we have the best numbers with them in maybe ever. They're saying ever. I read this morning where ever, the best numbers. He's lost much of the black population because he's done a horrible job for black people. He's also done a horrible job for Hispanics. But wait till you see these millions of people pouring into our country, and they're going to take the jobs, and it's already started, and you haven't seen anything yet. It's a disaster.
I'll tell you one thing. Trump would really help himself if he said,
President Trump, will you take any action as president to slow the climate crisis?
So I want absolutely immaculate clean water, and I want absolutely clean air, and we had it. We had H2O. We had the best numbers ever, and we were using all forms of energy, all forms, everything. And yet, during my 4 years, I had the best environmental numbers ever. And my top environmental people gave me that statistic just before I walked on the stage, actually.
I don't know where the hell he's been. The idea that anything he said is true. I've passed the most extensive climate change legislation in history. We find ourselves, and by the way, black colleges. I came up with $15 billion for HBCUs, historic black universities and colleges, because they don't have those. They don't have the kind of contributors that they have to build these laboratories and the like. Any black student is capable in college of doing any white student can do. They just don't have the money, but now they'll be able to get those jobs in high tech. We're in a situation where the idea that he is claiming to have done something that had the cleanest water, he hadn't done a damn thing with the environment. He pulled out of the Paris Peace Accord, Climate Accord. I immediately joined it because if we reach 1.5 degrees Celsius at any one point, where there's no way back. The only existential threat to humanity is climate change, and he didn't do a damn thing about it. He wants to undo all that I've done.
The Paris Accord was going to cost us $1 trillion, and China nothing, and Russia nothing, and India nothing. It was a ripoff of the United States, and I ended it because I didn't want to waste that money because they treat us horribly. We were the only ones who was costing us money. Nobody else was paying into it, and it was a disaster. But everything that he said just now, I'll give you an example. I heard him say before insulin. I'm the one that got the insulin down for the seniors. I took care of the seniors. What he's doing is destroying all of our medical programs because the migrants coming in, they want everybody. And look, I have the biggest heart on the stage, I guarantee you that. And I want to take care of people. But we're destroying our country. They're taking over our schools, our hospitals, and they're going to be taking over Social Security. He is destroying Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid.
Where does this guy come from? The idea is that we, in fact, we were the only ones of consequence who were not members of the Paris Accord. How can we do anything if we're not able to? The United States can't get its pollution under control. One of the largest polluters in the world, number one. We're making significant progress. By 2035, we will have cut pollution in half. We have made significant progress, and we're continuing to make progress. We set up a climate corps for thousands of young people who learn how to deal with climate, just like the Peace Corps. And we're moving in directions that are going to significantly change the elements of cause of pollution. But the idea that he claims that he has the biggest heart up here and he's really concerned about pollution and about climate, I've not seen any indication of that. And by the way, with regard to prescription drugs, one company agreed that they would reduce the price to $35, which I was calling for, one, voluntarily. I made sure every company in the world, every pharmaceutical company, cannot have to pay.
Thank you.
And by the way,
so every day, millions of Americans struggle just to make ends meet. For many older Americans, Social Security provides a critical lifeline. President Biden, if nothing is done to Social Security, seniors will see their benefits cut in just over 10 years. Will you name tonight one specific step that you're willing to take to keep Social Security solvent?
Yes, make the very wealthy begin to pay their fair share.
Manufacturing
right now,
from getting burned
everybody
down.
making under $170,000 pays 6% of their income, of their paycheck, every single time they get a paycheck from the time of the first one they get when 18 years old. The idea that they're going to, I've been proposing that everybody, they pay, the millionaires pay 1%. So no one after, I would not raise the cost of Social Security for anybody under $400,000. After that, I began to make the wealthy begin to pay their fair share by increasing from 1% beyond.
By the way,
guarantee the program for life.
People pay.
So you still have 82 seconds left. Are there any other measures that you think that would be able to help keep Social Security solvent, or is that one enough?
Well, no, that one enough will keep it solvent. But the biggest thing I'll do if we defeat this man, because he wants to get rid of Social Security. He thinks there's plenty to cut in Social Security. He's wanted to cut Social Security and Medicare both times. And that's what. And if you look at the program put forward by the House Republican caucus that he, I believe, supports, is in fact want to cut it as well. The idea that we don't need to protect our seniors is ridiculous. And by the way, the American public has greater health care coverage today than ever before. And on the ACA, as I said, you're in a circumstance where 400,000 people, 40 million people would not have insurance because they have a pre-existing condition. Only thing that allows them to have that insurance is the fact that they, in fact, are part of the ACA.
There's another subject, by the way, that I can talk about
we're in a
personally.
situation where we talk about education for black communities. I've raised the amount of money for Pell Grants, another $8,000. So anybody making under $70,000 a year is going to be able to get $15,000 toward their tuition. He just doesn't know what he's talking about.
Thank you, President Biden. President Trump.
So I've dealt with politicians all my life. I've been on this side of the equation for the last 8 years. I've never seen anybody lie like this guy. He lies. I've never seen it. He can look you in the face. About so many other things, too. And we mentioned the laptop. We mentioned Russia, Ukraine. Everything he does is a lie. It's misinformation and disinformation. The losers and suckers story that he made up is a total lie on the military. It's a disgrace. But Social Security, he's destroying it because millions of people are pouring into our country, and they're putting them onto Social Security. They're putting them onto Medicare, Medicaid. They're putting them in our hospitals. They're taking the place of our citizens. What they're doing to the VA, to our veterans, is unbelievable. Our veterans are living in the street, and these people are living in luxury hotels. He doesn't know what he's doing, and it's really coming back. I've never seen such anger in our country before.
President Biden?
The idea that veterans are not being taken care of, I told you before. And by the way, when I said suckers and losers, he acknowledged after that he fired that general. That general got fired because he's the one that acknowledged that that's what he said. He was the one standing with Trump when he said it, number one. Number two, the idea that we're going to be in a situation where all these millions and millions, the way he talks about it, illegal aliens are coming into the country and taking away our jobs. There's a reason why we have the fastest growing economy in the world, the reason why we have the most successful economy in the world. We're doing better than any other nation in the world. And by the way, those 15 Nobel laureates he talked about being phony, those 15 Nobel laureates, economists, they all said that if Trump is reelected, we're likely to have a recession and inflation is going to increase and go up.
Just like those
by the way,
spies
worst
that
president in
said,
history, 159 presidential scholars voted him the worst president in the history of the United States of America.
President Biden, thank you so much. Let's turn to the cost of child care, which many American families struggle to afford. President Trump, both you and President Biden have tried to address this issue, but the average cost of child care in this country has risen to more than $11,000 a year per child. For many families, the cost of child care for 2 children is more than their rent. In your second term, what would you do to make child care more affordable?
Just to go back, the general got fired because he was no good. And if he said that, that's why he made it up. But we have 19 people that said I didn't say it, and they're very highly respected, much more so than him.
Biden can say a bunch of people said this about Trump.
He doesn't fire people.
When you see the New York Times,
he never fired people. I've never seen him fire anybody. I did fire a lot. I fired Comey because he was no good. I fired a lot of the top people at the FBI, drained the swamp. They were no good. Not easy to fire people. You pay a price for it, but they were no good. I inherited these people. I didn't put them there. I didn't put Comey there. He was no good. I fired him. This guy hasn't fired anybody. He never fires. He should have fired every military man that was involved with that the Afghanistan horror show, the most embarrassing moment in the history of our country. He didn't fire. Did you fire anybody? Did you fire anybody that's on the border that's allowed us to have the worst border in the history of the world? Did anybody get fired for allowing 18 million people, many from prisons, many from mental institutions? Did you fire anybody that allowed our country to be destroyed? Joe, our country is being destroyed as you and I sit up here and waste a lot of time on this debate. This shouldn't be a debate. He is the worst president. He just said about me because I said it. But look, he's the worst president in the history of our country. He's destroyed our country. Now all of a sudden he's trying to get a little tough on the border. He came out with a nothing deal, and it reduced it a little bit, like this much. It's insignificant. He wants open borders. He wants our country to either be destroyed or he wants to pick up those people as voters. And I don't think we just can't let it happen. If he wins this election, our country doesn't have a chance, not even a chance, of coming out of this rut. We probably won't have a country left anymore. That's how bad it is. He is the worst in history by far.
Thank you, President Trump. President Biden?
We are the most admired country in the world. We're the United States of America. There's nothing beyond our capacity. We're the finest military in the history of the world, the finest in the history of the world. No one thinks we're weak. No one wants to screw around with us. Nobody, number one. Number two, the idea that we're talking about worst presidents. I wasn't joking. Look it up or go online. 159 or 58, don't hold me the exact number, presidential historians, they've had meetings and they voted who's the worst president in American history, one through best to worst. They said he was the worst in all of American history. That's a fact. That's not conjecture. He can argue they're wrong, but that's what they voted. The idea that he is doing anything to deal with child care, he did virtually nothing to child care. We should significantly increase the child care tax credit. We should significantly increase the availability of women and men or single parents to be able to go back to work, and we should encourage businesses to have.
Thank you, President Biden. President Trump, the question was about what would you do to make child care more affordable, if you want to take your minute.
Just so you understand, we have polling, we have other things that they rate him the worst because what he's done is so bad. And they rate me, I'll show you, I will show you, and they rate me one of the best, okay? And if I'm given another 4 years, I will be the best. I think I'll be the best. Nobody's ever created an economy like us. Nobody ever cut taxes like us. He's the only one I know. He wants to raise your taxes by 4 times. He wants to raise everybody's taxes by 4 times. He wants the Trump tax cuts to expire, so everybody, including the two of you, are going to pay 4 to 5 times. Nobody ever heard of this before. All my life, I'd grow up and I'd see politicians talking about cutting taxes. When we cut taxes, as I said, we did more business. Apple and all these companies, they were bringing money back into our country. The worst president in history by far, and everybody knows it.
President Biden?
Look, the fact of the matter is that he's dead wrong about, he's increased the tariff, he will increase the taxes on middle-class people. I said I'd never raise a tax on anybody making less than $400,000. I didn't. But this tariff is 10% tariffs. Everything coming into the country, you know what the economists say? That's going to cost the average American $2,500 a year more, because they're going to have to pay the difference in food and all the things that are important. Number two, he's in a situation where he talks about how he has not raised, he's somehow helped the middle class. The middle class have been devastated by you. Now you want a new tax cut of $5 trillion over the next 10 years, which is going to fundamentally bankrupt the country. You had the largest deficit of any president in American history, number one. Number two, you have not, in fact, made any contact, any progress with China. We are the lowest trade deficit with China since 2010.
Thank you, President Biden.
You lost.
Thank you, President Biden. Let's discuss an epidemic impacting millions of Americans that both of you have made a top priority in your first term, the opioid crisis. And for both of you, the number of overdose deaths in this country has gone up. Under your term, it went up. Under your term, it has gone up. Former President Trump, despite the efforts that both of you have made, more than 100,000 Americans are dying from overdoses every year, primarily from fentanyl and other opioids. What will you do to help Americans right now in the throes of addiction who are struggling to get the treatment they need?
To finish up, we now have the largest deficit in the history of our country under this guy. We have the largest deficit with China. He gets paid by China. He's a Manchurian candidate. He gets money from China. So I think he's afraid to deal with them or something. But do you notice he never took out my tariffs, because we bring in so much money with the tariffs that I imposed on China. He never took them away. He can't, because it's too much money. It's tremendous. And we saved our steel industries, and there was more to come, but he hasn't done that. But he hasn't cut the tariffs because he can't, because it's too much money. But he's got the largest deficit in the history of our country, and he's got the worst situation with China. China's going to own us if you keep allowing them to do what they're doing to us as a country. They are killing us as a country, Joe, and you can't let that happen. You're destroying our country.
So, President Trump, you have 67 seconds left. The question was, what are you going to do to help Americans in the throes of addiction right now who are struggling to get the treatment they need?
Jake, we were doing very well at addiction until the COVID came along. We had the 2.5, almost 3 years of like nobody's ever had before, any country, in every way. And then we had to get tough, and it was the drugs pouring across the border it started to increase. We got great equipment. We bought the certain dog that's the most incredible thing that you've ever seen, the way they can spot it. We did a lot.
I wonder if they're going to talk about
we were getting very low numbers, very low numbers. Then he came along. The numbers, have you seen the numbers now? It's not only the 18 million people that I believe is even low, because the gotaways, they don't even talk about gotaways. But the numbers of the amount of drugs and human trafficking in women coming across our border, the worst thing I've ever seen, at numbers that nobody's ever seen under him, because the border's so bad. But the number of drugs coming across our border now is the largest we've ever had by far.
President Trump, thank you. President Biden?
Fentanyl and the byproducts of fentanyl went down for a while. And I wanted to make sure we use the machinery that can detect fentanyl, these big machines that roll over everything that comes across the border. And it costs a lot of money. That was part of this deal we put together, this bipartisan deal. More fentanyl machines, more be able to detect drugs, more numbers of agents, more numbers of all the people at the border. And when we had that deal done, he called his Republican colleagues and said, don't do it. It's going to hurt me politically. He never argued it's not a good bill. It's a really good bill. We need those machines. We need those machines. And we're coming down very hard in every country in Asia in terms of precursors for fentanyl. And Mexico is working with us to make sure they don't have the technology to be able to put it together. That's what we have to do. We need those machines.
Thank you, President Biden. President Trump, and again, the question is about Americans in the throes of addiction right now, struggling to get the treatment they need.
Well, because this does pertain to it. He ended Remain in Mexico. He ended catch and release. I made it catch and release in Mexico, not catch and release here. We had so many things that we had done, hard negotiations with Mexico, and I got it all for nothing. It's just like when you have a hostage. We always pay $6 billion for a hostage. Every time we say there's a hostage. Now we have a hostage, a Wall Street Journal reporter, I think a good guy, and he's over there because Putin is laughing at this guy, probably asking for billions of dollars for the reporter. I will have him out very quickly, as soon as I take office. Before I take office, I said by literally as soon as I win the election, I will have that reporter out. He should have had him out a long time ago, but Putin's probably asking for billions and billions of dollars because this guy pays it every time. We had 2 cases where we paid $6 billion for 5 people. I got 58 people out, and I paid essentially nothing.
Thank you, President Trump. Dana?
Let's turn to concerns that voters have about each of you. President Biden, you would be 86 at the end of your second term. How do you address concerns about your capability to handle the toughest job in the world well into your 80s?
Well, first of all, I spent half my career being criticized being the youngest person in politics. I was the second youngest person ever elected to the United States Senate, and now I'm the oldest. This guy's 3 years younger and a lot less competent. I think that just look at the record. Look at what I've done. Look how I've turned around the horrible situation he left me. As I said, 50 million new jobs, 800,000 manufacturing jobs, more investment in America, over billions of dollars in private investment in enterprises that we are growing. By the way, we brought an awful lot of people. The whole idea of computer chips, we used to have 40% of the market. We invented those chips, and we lost it because he was sending people to find the cheapest jobs overseas and to bring home a product. So I went to South Korea. I convinced Samsung to invest billions of dollars here in the United States, and guess what? Those fabs they call to build these chips, those fabs pay over $100,000. You don't need a college degree for them. And there's billions, about $40 billion already being invested and being built right now in the United States, creating significant jobs for Americans from all over the world.
President Biden, you have 40 seconds left. Would you like to add anything?
Yeah, I would. The idea that somehow we are this failing country. I never heard a president talk like this before. We're the envy of the world. Name me a single major
We're not the envy of the
country
world.
president
We're a joke,
wouldn't trade
and that's
places
why
with the
things
United
are
States of
happening the way
America
they are.
for all our problems and all our opportunities.
We're an absolute joke.
We're the most progressive country in the world in getting things done.
Progressive.
We're
That's
the strongest country in the world.
Progressive
We're a country in the world who
equals
keeps our word, and everybody trusts us. All of our allies.
No, they don't.
And our those who he coddles up to.
Nobody trusts
Kim
the United
Jong-un, he
States
sends
anymore.
love letters to, and Putin,
Not
etc.
even their own
They
citizens.
don't want to screw around with us.
Thank you. Former President Trump, to follow up, you would be 82 at the end of your second term. What do you say to voters who have concerns
Look at the
about your
difference between the
capabilities
two,
to
by the
serve?
way.
Well, I took 2 tests, cognitive tests. I aced them, both of them, as you know. We made it public. He took none. I'd like to see him take one, just one, a real easy one. Like go through the first 5 questions. He couldn't do it. But I took 2 cognitive tests. I took physical exams every year. And, you know, we knock on wood wherever we may have wood, that I'm in very good health. I just won 2 club championships, not even senior, 2 regular club championships. To do that, you have to be quite smart, and you have to be able to hit the ball a long way, and I do it. He doesn't do it. He can't hit a ball 50 yards. He challenged me to a golf match. He can't hit a ball 50 yards. I think I'm in very good shape. I feel that I'm as in good a shape as I was 25, 30 years ago. Actually, I'm probably a little bit lighter, but I'm in as good a shape as I was years ago. I feel very good. I feel the same. But I was willing to take a cognitive test, and you know what? If I didn't do well, I aced him.
In this debate.
Dr. Ronnie Jackson, who's a great guy when he was White House doctor, and then I took another one, a similar one, and one of them said they've never seen anybody ace him.
Thank you. President Biden?
As you can see, he is 6'5" and only 223 pounds, or 235 pounds.
What?
Well, you said 6'4", 200. Well, anyway, that's what you're. Anyway, just take a look at what he says he is, and take a look at what he is. Look, I'd be happy to have a driving contest with him. The reason I got my handicap, which when I was vice president, down to a 6. But by the way, I told you before, I'm happy to play golf with you if you carry your own bag. Think you can do it?
That's the biggest lie, that he's a 6 handicap of all.
I was an 8 handicap.
Yeah.
8.
Never.
But I have, you know how many?
I've seen you swing. I know you swing.
And by the way, you can laugh at this right now, but this right here
specific concern
will tell you
that voters
whether
have
or not
about you.
somebody's a fucking liar.
Will you pledge tonight
whether or not you are
that once all
true
legal
golfer
challenges
or
have
you're
been
a liar?
exhausted, that you will accept the results of this election, regardless of who wins?
Notice they're
And
moving on.
you will say right now that
'Cause
political
Biden is a
violence
liar.
in any form is unacceptable.
Well, I shouldn't have to say that, but
I'll
of
go
course
into
I
this in a
believe
minute.
that. It's totally unacceptable.
But that was
and if
a
you would see
very
my
important
statements that I
thing to
made on
talk
Twitter
about
at the
is
time,
golf, and I'll
and
explain
also
why in a
my
minute.
statement that I made in the Rose Garden, you would say it's one of the strongest statements you've ever seen. In addition to the speech I made in front of, I believe, the largest crowd I've ever spoken to, and I will tell you, nobody ever talks about that. They talk about a relatively small number of people that went to the Capitol, and in many cases were ushered in by the police. And as Nancy Pelosi said, it was her responsibility, not mine. She said that loud and clear. But the answer is, if the election is fair, free, and I want that more than anybody. And I'll tell you something. I wish he was a great president, because I wouldn't be here right now. I'd be at one of my many places enjoying myself. I wouldn't be under indictment because I wouldn't have been his political opponent,
wouldn't have been
because he
indicted if
indicted me because
if
I
he
was his
wasn't running for
opponent.
president.
I wish he was a great president. I would rather have that. I wouldn't be here. I don't mind being here. But the only
Hasn't
reason I'm
reminded
here
me
is
to
he's
talk
so
about the
bad
golf
as a
thing.
president that I'm going to make America great again. We're going to make America great again. We're a failing nation right now. We're a seriously failing nation. And we're a failing nation because of him. His policies are so bad. His military policies are insane. They're insane. These are wars that will never end with him. He will drive us into World War III, and we're closer to World War III than anybody can imagine. We are very, very close to World War III, and he's driving us there. And Kim Jong-un and President Xi of China, Kim Jong-un of North Korea, all of these, Putin, they don't respect him. They don't fear him. They have nothing going with this gentleman, and he's going to drive us into World War III.
You want a World War III, let him follow and win, and let Putin say, do what you want, NATO. Just do what you want. There's a thing called Article 5. An attack on one is an attack on all, and required response. The idea, I can't think of a single major leader in the world who wouldn't trade places with the job I've done and what they've done. Because we are a powerful nation. We have wonderful people. It's because of the people, not me. It's because of the American people. They're capable of anything, and they step up when they're needed. And right now, we're needed. We're needed to protect the world because our own safety is at stake. And again, you want to have a war, just let Putin go ahead and take Kyiv, make sure they move on, see what happens in Poland, Hungary, and other places along that border. Then you have a war.
President Trump, as I come back to you for a follow-up, the question was, will you accept the results of this election, regardless of who wins?
Just to finish what he said, if I might, Russia, they took a lot of land from Bush. They took a lot of land from Obama and Biden. They took no land, nothing from Trump, nothing. He knew not to do it. He's not going to play games with me. He knew that. I got along with him very well, but he knew not to play games. He took nothing from me. But now he's going to take the whole thing from this man right here. That's a war that should have never started. It would have never started ever with me. And he's going to take Ukraine. And, you know, you asked me a question before, would you do this? He's got us in such a bad position right now with Ukraine and Russia, because Ukraine's not winning that war. He said, I will never settle until such time. They're running out of people. They're running out of soldiers. They've lost so many people. It's so sad. They've lost so many people, and they've lost those gorgeous cities with the golden domes that are 1,000 years old, all because of him and stupid decisions. Russia would have never attacked. if I were
President Trump,
president.
the question was, will you accept the results of the election, regardless of who wins? Yes or no, please.
If you cheat?
If it's a fair and legal and good election, absolutely. I would have much rather accepted these.
I love that. I love that
the
dumbass
fraud
question.
And everything else was ridiculous. And if you want, we'll have a news conference on it in a week.
If the Democrats
we'll have another one of these in a week. But I will absolutely. There's nothing I'd rather do. It would be much easier for me to do that than I'm running again. I wasn't really going to run until I saw the horrible job he did. He's destroying our country. I would be very happy to be someplace else, in a nice location someplace.
You cannot let
and again,
communists...
no indictments, no political opponent stuff, because it's the only way he thinks he can win. But unfortunately, it's driven up my numbers and driven them up to a very high level because the people understand it.
Well, let's see what your numbers are when this election is over.
Let's see.
Let's see. You're a whiner. When you lost the first time, you continued, you appealed and appealed to courts all across the country. Not one single court in America said any of your claims had any merit, state or local, none. But you continue to provoke this lie about somehow there was all this misrepresentation, all this stealing.
All
there was
the stuff
no
that came out
evidence
after
of that
the
at
fact.
all. And I tell you what, I doubt whether you'll accept it because you're such a whiner. The idea if you lose again, you accepted anything, you can't stand the loss. Something snapped in you when you lost the last time.
We'll be right back with more from the CNN presidential debate, live from Georgia.
Yeah, so this is an obvious, absolute beating that Donald Trump is taking to Biden. It's embarrassing to watch. I sort of thought that this was going to happen this way, but not quite as bad as what I'm witnessing now. But Kazan, going back to the cancer thing real quick, and the healthcare, is that I have not talked about this really at all. I dealt with cancer and treatment, and luckily, for right now, everything is good. Hopefully it stays that way. But I can tell you the cost involved with the current healthcare situation that we're in is incredibly expensive. And I don't know how most people can afford, if they had to deal with what I had to deal with, could actually survive financially. And to say, this whole pre-existing condition thing, I've had insurance my entire life. When I was a kid, and then when I had to go off on my own, I got insurance. I've always carried insurance. I was never the type of person, and in fact, I'm in the insurance business. I've never been the type of person to get insurance or think that it's okay to get insurance after a tragedy happens. It's like buying home insurance after your house burns down. And this thing with the pre-existing condition, as long as you've always had insurance, the pre-existing condition thing shouldn't have really ever be an issue. But as we know, what most people do is they wait to get insurance or try to get insurance after something happens. Well, this Obamacare thing, and I won't go into detail, but eventually what ended up happening with Obamacare, at least in Florida, and I'm not sure what what state everybody else is in, but I can tell you this, that you had initially had several different companies you can go to and shop with on the whatever, the healthcare system or whatever it was. But now in Florida, there's really only two: Blue Cross and a company like Sunshine Health. And so you're forced to pay insane premiums. I mean, when I was younger, I was paying, I don't know, $100 a month or whatever it was as a self-employed person. And now it's like, $1,200, $1,300 a month. Plus the deductibles are insane. So when you're going through cancer treatment, chemo, radiation, all that kind of stuff, they can get into the hundreds of thousands of dollars. And so, you know, again, I won't go into too much detail on it because, I mean, you can, but the current healthcare system that we're in, I don't know how people can afford to stay alive. I really don't. And that's something that I need to, you know, kind of talk about more. And I haven't talked about my situation because it's just been kind of difficult, but I will. I'll get into that more a little bit later.
We find ourselves in a situation where, number one, we have to make sure that we have a fair tax system. I ask anyone out there in the audience or anyone out watching this debate, do you think the tax system is fair? The fact is that I said nobody even making under $400,000 had a single penny increase in their taxes and will not. And if I'm reelected, that'll be the case again. But this guy has increased your taxes because of the deficit, number one. He's increased inflation because of the debacle he left after the way he handled the pandemic. And he finds himself in a position where he now wants to tax you more by putting a 10% tariff on everything that comes into the United States of America. What I did, when, for example, he wants to get rid of the ability of Medicare us to be able to negotiate drug prices with the big pharma companies. Well, guess what? We got it down to $35 for insulin instead of $400. No more than $2,000 for every senior, no matter how much prescription they need. You know what that did? That reduced the federal debt by $160 billion over 10 years because the government doesn't have to pay the exorbitant prices. I'm going to make that available to every senior. All along, it's happening now, and everybody in America. He wants to get rid of that. I'm going to make sure that we have child care. We're going to significantly increase the credits that people have for child care. I'm going to make sure we do something about what we're doing on lead pipes and all the things that are causing health problems for people across the country. We're going to continue to fight to bring down inflation and give people a break.
Thank you, President Biden. President Trump, you now have 2 minutes for your closing statement.
Like so many politicians, this man is just a complainer. He said, we want to do this, we want to do that, we want to get rid of this tax, that tax. But he doesn't do anything. All he does is make our country unsafe by allowing millions and millions of people to pour in. Our military doesn't respect him. We look like fools in Afghanistan. We didn't stop Israel. It was such a horrible thing that would have never happened. It should have never happened. Iran was broke. Anybody that did business with Iran, including China, they couldn't do business with the United States. They all passed. Iran was broke. They had no money for Hamas or Hezbollah, for terror, no money whatsoever. Again, Ukraine should have never happened. He talks about all this stuff, but he didn't do it. For 3.5 years, we're living in hell. We have the Palestinians and we have everybody else rioting all over the place. You talk about Charlottesville. This is 100 times Charlottesville, 1,000 times. The whole country is exploding because of you, because they don't respect you, and they have to respect their president, and they don't respect you throughout the world. What we did was incredible. We rebuilt the military. We got the largest tax cut in history, the largest regulation cut in history. The reason he's got jobs is because I cut the regulations that gave jobs, but he's putting a lot of those regulations back on. All of the things that we've done, nobody's never seen anything like, even from a medical standpoint, right to try, where we can try space-age materials instead of going to Asia or going to Europe and trying to get, when you're terminally ill, now you can go and you can get something. You sign a document. They've been trying to get it for 42 years. But you know what we did for the military was incredible choice for our soldiers, where our soldiers, instead of waiting for 3 months to see a doctor, can go out and get themselves fixed up and readied up and take care of themselves, and they're living. And that's why I had the highest approval rating in the history of the VA. So all of these things, we're in a failing nation, but it's not going to be failing anymore. We're going to make it great again.
Thank you, former President Trump, President Biden. Stay with us because we have full analysis of this debate. Anderson Cooper and Aaron Burnett starts now on CNN.
Who cares about them? I want to hear what you guys have to say about what your analysis is. And Kazan, thank you for the kind words. I mean, it's been a difficult journey, and I won't go into it too much, but yeah, golf. Thank you. So, golf, like any sport, let's just say tennis. If you're one-on-one with somebody and you're playing out on a course with someone for, let's say, 5 hours, because typically a round of golf will take you 18 holes, would probably take you about 5 hours or so. So it's a long time to be with someone, and you get to know them very well. And if you're having some drinks when you're out there too, it loosens somebody up a little bit, but when it comes to a sport like that, you get to know someone and you get to know their character. And more specifically, you get to find out whether or not, if they cheat, if they lie. And what I mean by that is, you'll see if they're playing straight up, they'll just drive, and if they miss the drive, they'll say, okay, well, I missed it, I'll take the penalty shot, whatever it is. Or they might take a mulligan, which means they'll hit off the green or hit off the tee box again. Or if they hit a drive into the rough somewhere and you witness them kicking a ball out of a bad area, or if they take multiple putts if they're on the green. In other words, if they don't just play straight up and say, you know what, I missed that, I'm going to take the penalty, I'll take the punishment that because of the shot that I made, and here's my straight up score. And I'm making it oversimplistic, making it sound oversimplistic, and it's not. It's when you're out there, and if you played golf long enough, you'll understand that there are people that will just play straight up and say, I shot an 8 on a par 4. And then there's the other person like Biden who would say, I shot a 5 on a par 4. And that guy, the guy who shot the 5, moved his ball, took a mulligan, lied about what his score was, whatever. And Donald Trump called out, and if you guys want to hear Kari Lake speak, just tell me to shut up and I can put her on. But the way that Donald Trump spoke about Biden was, I've seen how you swing. You are not that good. You are not what you're saying. And I played Division I college tennis. I've played golf my entire life as well. I know exactly what Donald Trump is talking about. There are people that would say, I'm a good golfer, I'm great. And then when you go out and you see their swing, whether or not they're a tennis player or a golfer, you know immediately if they're good or not. And if they're telling you that they're good and you see their swing and it's not so good, they're a liar, because they should know better. They shouldn't lie about that. And somebody like Donald Trump is the type of guy that he might be an asshole, he might be a dick, he might be arrogant, but he's not going to lie to you. He's going to tell you straight up, this is what my handicap is, and I don't want to play with you because you're not good enough. That might piss you off, but at least he's telling the truth and he's being honest with you. Biden will tell you, I can beat Donald Trump, but Donald Trump would kick the shit out of him in any round of golf anywhere, because Donald Trump is simply a better player. And that's what you're dealing with in politics. And this is what you're dealing with somebody like Joe Biden and the neo-Bolsheviks and these communists and the people that are running the Biden campaign. Biden isn't even running his campaign. And it was blatantly obvious in this debate how bad he is as a human being. And he got called out and got destroyed by Donald Trump. And a lot of it had to do with the fact that, Biden just simply cannot. He's so old and so decrepit, and he's deteriorating so badly that he can't hang with Donald Trump anymore. But even if he was, at the top of his game, Donald Trump would still destroy him. So, do you think that the average people who play golf and didn't already dislike Biden saw that and recognized that he's full of crap? Yeah, I think a lot of people did, but I think unfortunately, it takes someone who would be out on a golf course with him to realize what a scumbag that he is. But for I hear this term that people use. It's called normies. The average person who's not involved in sports, who doesn't get into the minutia of what it is that I'm talking about, they believe the stuff that Biden is saying. And the reason they believe the stuff that Biden is saying is because he's being propped up by CNN, MSNBC, Facebook, Instagram, et al. But when it comes to and I encourage all of you, those of you that are listening right now, because we have over 700 people that are on X right now that are watching this. If you're not on X, you need to get on X. And it's not perfect, but one of the main reasons I think you need to get on there is because it's not as, and Odyssey, Kaz, you're on Odyssey. Odyssey, I think, is doing a lot of great things as well to counter censorship. YouTube is gone. I mean, they've made it perfectly clear that they are in the camp of the communists, even though it's a publicly traded company under Alphabet. Rumble is okay, but I don't get a ton of interaction with Rumble, but I do with X quite a bit. And the thing is most normal people that aren't really getting into the politics like a lot of us are, don't understand they're being lied to. They don't understand the type of person that Biden is, and they don't understand that he's being propped up by the three-letter agencies, by the mass media, by the military-industrial complex, and everything else. And so there's a lot at stake to keep Biden where he is. Now, Kaz, you brought up a really good point. There's a more, you said earlier, you think that there's a larger than 50% chance that they're going to switch him out with somebody else. After tonight, I think you may be right, because Biden did not look good tonight at all. He definitely got crushed by Trump, but they're not intelligent. These people they're communists. They're low IQ, and they fear no consequence. So after tonight, they're still going to convince themselves that Biden did a great job, and as long as he's still able to barely walk, they're going to keep him in office, because it's not him that's controlling anything at all. It's the people behind the scenes. So if they can keep him out front as a figurehead, they can do whatever it is that they want to do behind the scenes. But it'll be interesting to see what, over, the next few hours and tomorrow, what everybody says. I mean, everybody's going to spin it the way they're going to spin it. But, all of you that were watching it with me tonight, it was pretty clear. I mean, Biden looked terrible and Trump looked great. And this is something like I've never seen before in my 50 years of being on this planet. I mean, it was really tough to watch. And even CNN cut off Biden when he started rambling, which is what I'm kind of doing right now. But let me know what you guys think. Those of you in X as well, let me know what you think. Did Trump overwhelmingly beat Biden? Was it sort of, not what you expected? Yeah, what do you think? Let's see what these guys have to say here.
Check. Listen, I remember Charlottesville very heavily because I actually spent a lot of time on CNN. As a matter of fact, I was the first to go on and debunking that. And Jake Tapper happened to be the host who I was the guest on. And we were going round and round on good people on both sides. But anyway, where I'm going with that, he was trying to go back and dig up some old bones because he has nothing to run on is what I got on. And so he's reaching. And just to see his declining health is just, it was really sad. And listen, real quick, as you saw, Gavin Newsom made his appearance. The Democrats have the super delegate process. And we've never done this ever in the history to have a debate like this before, the DNC and RNC. So they're like circling the wagon. Just like on CNN, the opening statement from one of the CNN guests was saying that the Democrats are panicking. Right there when Anderson Cooper, right when he went on, that's the first thing he said in this opening statement.
All right, Bruce Lavelle, Joe Pinion, great to see you both, guys. Thanks.
Thanks, gentlemen.
Yeah, thanks. Appreciate it. Thanks.
All right, let's bring in now Rick Leventhal, host right.
Now, the Democrats are panicking, but do you think that they're going to cheat like they did? And I'm convinced of it, that they cheated in the last election. So do they have some way of getting around this to assure Biden's win?
Your take on some of the highlights tonight here from Atlanta.
Well, I appreciate what he said at the end, which is basically, I wouldn't be here if you weren't such a terrible president.
Yeah.
And I thought that was a great point. Trump, a lot of people have said, why isn't Trump relaxing? He's at an age where he can play golf every day and he doesn't have to work that hard. But he made it clear that he's only there because he thinks Biden's doing a terrible job. And I also thought Trump looked presidential. He didn't do a lot. He didn't make a lot of faces. He made some because he felt like what Biden was saying was nonsense. But he was very clear. And what I also respected and appreciated was that he was using his time wisely. If he couldn't finish a thought in a previous question, when he was asked the next question, he said, well, I want to finish, and he went back a lot. And I thought that was smart. He also attacked Biden a lot on the border, which was also smart, because I think there was one question, maybe two, about the border crisis. And Trump kept bringing it up. And I never heard Joe Biden one time say anything sympathetic toward the victims or their families of people who were raped and murdered by illegal migrants. He never said a word about it. He just kept attacking Trump and calling him a liar. So, I don't know. I was impressed. A lot of what Biden said, I had a hard time following, quite honestly, because he does mumble and stumble and stutter a lot.
And that's the other thing, too, is everything that's going on the border, and I will, go off on a major tangent, but this is all being done by design. You have to understand that the people that are running the Biden administration, the people at the UN, the United Nations, the NGOs that are getting paid by our taxpayer dollars are facilitating the invasion of all of these people coming into our country. This could be stopped and dealt with very, very easily. But the purpose of bringing these people in, and this is not in dispute. Typically, Latin Americans will vote blue. They are okay with socialism and communism. And so by bringing these people into the United States, the hope is to turn them into blue voters and permanently turning the United States into a communist country. Again, I keep bringing this up over and over again, and then I do this in the spaces that I'm in on X, is that this is neo-Bolshevism. These are people left over from, you know, the communist times that are trying to turn us into a communist country. That's what they're trying to do. And so, you know, a lot of these debates they're false debates. They're meaningless debates because we are going through a soft coup takeover. We are being taken over by mass immigration and soft law, because the people that are coming in to our country are changing the laws. Like you can no longer speak out against Judaism. If you say anything about Jews, it's wrong. It's anti-Semitic. There are these laws now. There's just, I was talking about the fifth column that I was talking about earlier on. You know, we have a major issue going on here in the United States and in Europe, where there is a replacement. There is a great replacement going on to replace the whites in America and in Europe. I mean, it's really not in dispute at all. It is happening. It is a strategy. And it is a Bolshevik revolution, but in a modern time and a modern way.
His words, he froze. Let's take a look.
Eligible for what I've been able to do with the with the COVID. Excuse me, with dealing with everything we have to do with. Look, if we finally beat eligible for what I've been able to do with.
All right, guys, and we're going to we asked Danielle to step aside. We have Raphael Warnock, senator from Georgia, also the governor of California, Gavin Newsom. They're about to give a press conference. Let's listen in.
Yeah, let's hear what they say.
Proud to be joined here today with members that fully represent the rich diversity of the Biden-Harris coalition. Look, tonight, I think what you saw, again, what we knew what we were going to see coming into the night, which is a very clear contrast, a very clear choice in this election. What you saw out of Donald Trump tonight was a man who took the stage and lied the entire night, grew increasingly unhinged throughout the night, and reminded the American people by the end of the debate exactly why they fired him in the first place 4 years ago. In contrast to that, you saw President Biden take the stage and did exactly what he did over the course of the last 4 years, fight relentlessly on behalf of the American people. He fought through a cold, and he made the case for his historic record of accomplishment, everything from 15 million jobs, 800,000 manufacturing jobs, the work that he has done since the day he took office to lower costs for Americans, capping the cost of insulin at $35. The work that he's done to cap prescription drug costs out of pocket for our seniors at $2,000 annually, the work that he's going to continue to do in his second term. In Donald Trump, you saw somebody who repeatedly refused to say that he would accept the results of the election once again, the same way that he did so in 2020. We saw the way that played out most violently on January 6th. He is all but promising to do that again if he loses this election again. He's already spent his months out on the stump saying that there's going to be
All right, guys, as we try to get a camera position, we're waiting to hear from Senator Raphael Warnock of Georgia, Gavin Newsom. We'll listen back in.
Returning a Roe v. Wade was a great thing. Once again, as he is out on the stump every day talking about the fact that these extreme state-level abortion bans are playing out brilliantly. That is the fundamental contrast that the American people saw as this debate played out over the course of the night. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett.
Hello, everyone. So I represent Texas, and we know that abortion is on the ballot. And to be clear, tonight we saw two things. People can choose between a con in commander-in-chief or a commander-in-chief. And so what we saw was someone who sat up there and was acting as if he was some used car salesman that wanted to just tell us whatever and pretend as if it was fact. The reality is that our president submitted to you what looks like.
Sorry, but do we even want to listen to this stuff anymore? I mean, how pathetic is this? Look at her hair. I mean, the things that she says, and and when you just listen to this stuff, and it's like we're tired of it. We're not going to listen to it anymore. We're done. We're moving on. This type of stuff doesn't get a reaction anymore
from us, and he wants to take more rights away from us, and he did not shy away from it. Every time he didn't want to answer a question, he just decided to deflect. The reality is that people are dying. We had over 26,000 women that were impregnated in the state of Texas alone in the last year since the Dobbs decision as a result of rape. That is unacceptable. You all know the story of Kate Cox. You know the story of Dr. Denard. You know the story of women that are potentially losing their lives. And so there is only one clear choice, and that clear choice is Joe Biden and the blue team. And that's exactly why we're here.
No, there's not. It's not. But look at these people. And then you have Gavin Newsom, the sleaziest man on the planet.
Elections are about the character of a nation. They are about jobs, they're about the economy, they're about war and peace, about a whole range of issues. But at the end of the day, it's really about the character of a country. And the American people got a chance tonight to be reminded about the character of Donald Trump.
These people running your country?
A man who stood there and lied for 90 minutes straight. But what I was also struck by was by what he did not say. Every time he was asked a question that had something to do with the lives of the ordinary working class people that I represent here in the state of Georgia, did you notice he never answered the question? When he was asked about child care.
All right, so Senator Raphael Warnock, we are in the spin room, and the spin has definitely begun. Democrats trying to save face over what many folks online and across the country now are seeing as a disaster for President Biden coming off this debate.
But look who they put out there. Look at this group of people. It's sickening. Every person in this group right here, including Gavin Newsom, is a failure. Look at Detroit. Look at LA, California as a whole, Houston, New Orleans, Chicago, Seattle, New York City. These are the people, those are the people that run it. And what do you have? Disaster. So it's not worth listening to them anymore. People have, there's this fatigue that's set in. We've had enough. We don't want to listen to it anymore. And Donald Trump, I mean, this was a all right, Kazan, have a good night. This is an absolute beatdown beyond beatdowns. And Donald Trump handled himself perfectly.
You've been here the whole time. I see it. I see that patch there. Look, folks, I shouldn't say this, but my brother always uses lines from movies. There was a famous movie about John Wayne, and he's working for the Northern military, trying to get the Apaches back in the reservation. And they were lying like hell to him. And they're all sitting on a bluff. And John Wayne was sitting with two Apaches. And one of them looked at John Wayne and said, these guys are nothing but lying, dog-faced pony soldiers. Except he's just a liar. Look, folks, what's going to happen over the next couple of days is they're going to be out there fact-checking all the things he said. I can't think of one thing
Cassie,
he
good to see
said
you
that
if you're
was
still
true.
there. Thanks for coming. Hope to see you
I'm
again.
not being facetious. But look, we're going to beat this guy. We need to beat this guy. And I need you in order to beat him. You're the people I'm running for. Here. He says he's going to be the retribution for his supporters. You are the reason why America's as good as we are. We're the finest nation in the whole damn world. And no one's close. Nobody's close. Well, let's keep going. See you at the next one. God love you all. Heading to North Carolina. All right. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. I want to go home with you. Thank you.
Whatever weirdo shit he's gonna say.
This ain't Texas. No hold'em.
All right, so it looks like you might need a little help getting off the stage, but gosh, you know,
jogging around.
It is, I think, enlightening for our audience to see what we just saw right there in the spin room, and then that little demonstration, whatever that was. The reality of the situation.
A very loving wife.
Yes, a very supportive wife. But the reality of the situation right now, no matter how the Democrats want to spin it, the front page of the New York Times right now reads, Biden struggles as Trump blusters. And you pulled up Politico earlier, and it said, Biden, what did it say? Biden bombs.
Trump pounces.
So.
There's some real panic by Democrats after this performance. I mean, after being...
Okay, yeah, this was terrible for Biden. So it'll be interesting to see what happens after this. But I'm going to wrap it up. And thank you for all of you that came out. We had in total close to 1,000 people watching, so that was pretty cool. But thank you all for coming out and listening and watching, and hope to see you again. I'm going to try and do these live shows on a regular basis. I've got to figure out what days and times and all that kind of stuff, but it was a lot of fun hanging out, and thanks for participating, and we'll see you all again soon. Thanks for coming out.